Welcome to the Morgan City Council work meeting. We welcome all of you joining us on Zoom. We can see your wonderful bright face there, Ty. How's it going? Good?
Good. Can you hear me?
Barely.
Barely?
I can hear you good.
That's good.
Is that better, Ty?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
That's better, yeah.
Can you folks hear me as well, since I have to talk?
Yep.
All right.
Well, welcome. We're going to go right to the proposal for the new power rate. David, we've got you.
All right. I am, so for those of you who remember, I'm Dave Berg and I'm back. So when I spoke to you previously, we basically sort of laid out where things were at. And now we have come up with some recommendations relative to a direction to take with rates. And so I'm going to share a screen. Also, you should have, I believe, received copies of the report as well, and all of the information, well, most of the information that'll be on my screen is also in the reports that the council people all have.
Okay, I think we've all got copies.
All right. And now can you see my PowerPoint presentation?
Yes. Yep.
All right, and then I'll just take off here so as to try to get through this as quickly as I can, but not too fast. And obviously, if you've got questions along the way, please interrupt me and ask away.
Jeff just showed up.
So,
Did Jeff just leave again? He was just on before.
We're just seeing if we had one more council member.
yeah, somebody was there for a minute. If you want, we can wait a sec to see if he gets back in.
Well, we've got a quorum, so we'll move on.
Okay, very good. So we're going to be talking about, so the last time when I spoke to you, I gave you some projections of operating results and reserves levels under the assumption that rates don't change. And we kind of talked about the need for revenue. And so I have to apologize that I found an error in the results that I presented you. But the good news is that when we fixed the error, the results got better. So I'm going to revisit that. So the bottom line is we don't need as much money as I talked about when I spoke to you the last time, but I do apologize because, you know, having an error in the results certainly isn't something that I'm ever looking to do. I'm going to briefly revisit cost of service, which didn't change just because it's important relative to where we're going. And then we're going to talk about proposed rates and see how those impact projections of financial results going forward, and especially reserves. And we'll talk a little bit about comparison to Rocky Mountain Power, and also just revisit briefly the concept of the purchase power cost adjustment, which we spoke about last time. So now that the new projected operating results under existing rates, the net position as a percent of revenue, it is still negative going forward, but it's better than it was. And so because there was an error in the model and the operating revenues were a little less than they should have been. So we still have the need for additional revenues, but it's not as bad as it was. And when we look at the reserves, they actually went negative previously, and now we started at about 1.6 million in reserves at the beginning of this fiscal year, last July. And we show that going down to about 300,000, but it's a positive 300,000. Whereas the numbers we looked at last time, the reserves actually went negative. But what we're going to try to do through our recommendations is we'd like to keep the reserve level based on my discussions with staff above $1 million. So that's sort of the target that we're looking at relative to what we're doing with the rate recommendations, which will start actually then in fiscal 23, which is in 2 weeks. The cost of service did not change, but what I wanted to show this again for, because we are going to be addressing in the recommendations for rates, is the fact that the small commercial demand customers are paying a fair amount less than they should. And if you remember last time, we looked at the comparisons of the existing rates to Rocky Mountain Power, and you can see that those customers were well below Rocky Mountain Power, and that the large commercial demand customers were paying more than they should. And actually that they were much more sort of on par with Rocky Mountain Power. So even in the rate comparison, you can kind of see that. And I talked somewhat about the rate design issues that were contributing to that. And I'll get to that when we get into the rate recommendations, because when we look at the actual rate recommendations, you'll be able to see the impact of what needs to happen with rate design, particularly for that large demand group. Now, the recommendation for rates is that each year, so starting in fiscal 23 through 26, we'll have an average 3.8% increase each of the years. So rates would go up, each year. It's not just a single rate increase. Also, we're adding monthly customer service charges for all the classes. Right now, nobody pays a monthly service charge. And in fact, for the residential class, the vast majority of that percentage increase will come from the increases in the customer service charges. The changes in their consumption rates are very minimal, and we'll see the specific numbers in a moment. Also, because of cost of service, there's, in particularly in the first year, there's a higher increase for the small commercial demand folks, and there's a lower increase for the large commercial demand. And there's even on certain usages, some of the large commercial demand may actually see a reduction in the first year, but it's something that's warranted based on the cost of service. We're also going to, you've got a lot of rate schedules. And so in talking with staff, we're going to combine some of them, because many of the rate schedules, they have the exact same rate. And so there really isn't a need to have all of those rate schedules when many of them have the exact same rate. And like I said, we'll revisit the power purchase adjustment clause. I've got presentations of rates with and without it. And so you'll be able to pick, kind of which way you'd like to go with that. So jumping into the rate proposals. Now, this is for you've got the city and county residential rates, and then you've got the very small commercial, the non-demand city and county. And their rates right now they're the same. So the city residential and the city non-demand commercial are the same. And then the county residential and the county commercial are the same. They pay a slightly higher, the county customers pay a slightly higher consumption rate than the city. Those small commercial customers and residential customers actually having the same basic rate for them is not particularly unusual, in that a lot of times their usages aren't much different. So we're keeping the basic structure of having the city rates and the county rates for these two groups be the same. You'll see we're adding basically $250 a year to that customer service charge. Now remember, you used to have a $5 residential customer service charge a while back that was effectively eliminated. But you'll notice, like I said, that with those increases in the customer service charge, you'll notice that the increases in the energy rates are very minimal. Like this first year, we only go from, it's basically 10.1 cents up to 10.12 cents. So it's a very, very small increase in the energy rates. because of the increased revenue that we need from these classes. We're getting the majority of it in these customer charges.
So Dave, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
So here's a question I think most of us are going to get asked, and it's going to come, well, not most of, but the residential, when we start talking to folks about this. So I just was sitting here with a calculator and I looked at that current rate of the energy charge, the 0 to 1,000 kilowatts.
Yep.
I was playing kind of with my numbers. Generally mine's about 400, which ends up to being about $40.40 a month at that 0.1010. If I did
Yes.
my math correctly, and tell me if I'm nuts, I went out to the 0.1027 for that same 400 kilowatts. And it looks like it's like 4108 is all that increased at. Does that sound about right to you?
Well, essentially, if you're at 400 kilowatt hours, that increase of $0.0002 or basically that will increase your bill by 8 cents.
So, yeah, so as I looked at that, it would have increased my bill for about $41.08. That's not counting the
60 cents.
base,
The
Yeah.
250. But see, so what your bill will really go up by is about $2.58. 250 because of the service charge. That is a rate. Okay,
right,
so when
right,
yeah,
right. But
That's
I was
right.
just, I was just looking at the calculation. So,
yes.
yeah, okay, all right. So
Yeah.
I guess my point is, it isn't that great if you're just looking at that. That increase is not that tremendous if you're just looking at that.
Well, if you're just looking at consumption, that's right. But
Yeah,
I find that extremes help. What if that customer charge was $20? Well, their bill would go up by $20.08, which would be a 50% increase.
right,
So, there would be little comfort in the fact that it was all in a service charge. It's still the bill that you have to pay.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Dave, while we're on the page, talk again. I know we talked last meeting about the need for a customer service charge. And that'll be new on customer accounts. We'll be getting questioned as to what's that's for. How do we answer that? And then why don't we just build that 3.8% in rate into the consumption side of it?
Well, the issue becomes there's a fixed cost to the utility of having somebody connect to the system. Just because you have zero consumption doesn't mean that there's zero cost. So for instance, somebody builds a house. Well, you've got to go out there and obviously the distribution line has to go by their house. But if let's say it already does, you have to install a transformer. You have to install a service drop. You have to install a meter set. You have to read the meter. You have to generate a bill. Even if their consumption is zero, all of those costs are there for the utility. There are very few, and I mean very few, electric utilities that have a zero customer charge. In my 38 years, I've encountered 3. 2 of them are you and Lehigh, for instance. And Lehigh is actually going on a similar path towards $10 is what I'm suggesting to you. But there's a fixed charge or a fixed cost associated with just having someone connected to the system. And so that's why, consumption is such that it doesn't really cover everything, especially if you're at a very low consumption. The other thing is if you put it all in the energy rate, then people at a higher consumption are paying more than they should. On a cost basis, you could justify something even greater than $10. And actually right now, Rocky Mountain Power's residential customer charge is $10. I'm going to guess it won't still be $10 in 2026, that they'll be, increasing their rates as well over the next 4 years. But it's a very standard thing in the industry, and it's totally justified from a cost of service perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I just add if I could, that is also where meter replacement comes. So as we upgrade and do SCADA and meters that show up on the network, it's important to have that consistent funding source to replace people's meters.
The recommended amounts are those come from just your experience in what other entities would charge? I mean, is it clearly arbitrary, but how do you back, or what would you use to support the $2.50 amount and then increasing it to the $10?
Well, let me say that one is because of the revenue needs, that if we increase it faster than that, you'd actually get more dollars than we need from the residential customers. So, that sort of overall 3.8% average, the vast majority of that we're able to get through this customer charge. And so if we raised it faster than that, that would be basically getting more money from the residential than we kind of need at the moment, unless we also then lowered energy rates. The other thing is I would say it's born from the experience of, at times, especially early in my career, about being too aggressive with increasing customer charges for residential customers, even when it's justified. It's an area that, particularly for lower fixed income folks, that hits them kind of hard. And so, I think after all of my years of doing this, one of the things I'm more attuned to is when you can, to do this gradually over a course of years, rather than just jumping to $10 to match Rocky Mountain Power in the first year.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, if you don't mind, Dave. Tony, do you remember what our customer charge used to be and what year that went away?
I think it was $5.
The customer charge was $5, and it went away during Mayor Egbert, during his tenure. So how long ago was that? So that would have been raised, probably 7, 8 years, 9 years ago.
Yeah, so that's another way to look at it, is that we started with 5, and so for all those years we went without a customer charge, and so to limp back into it's probably a good approach.
Well, and for instance, Spanish Forks is about $20. So there's a lot of variation that you'll see in that, and I know utilities that are as high as $60. They're sort of special instances, but for residential customer charges. So you're definitely at the low end of the range.
Do you know, Tony, why we did away with it?
Yeah, we did away with it. We did away with the $5 customer service charge because we were about to increase. It was a rob Peter to pay Paul thing. We were increasing either sewer or water rates fairly significant. So in order to ease the pain, we did away with that $5 service charge. So
yeah, I heard that same explanation. I heard it was water rates. So
yeah,
all right.
Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's why it was done. So
back to, you gotta be careful what you back off on.
that's correct.
Explain the increases.
Bring it back.
Yeah. I mean, 2020 hindsight, I wish we had never got rid of it, but that's, at the time, it seemed like
well, you're still okay. So we're just addressing from here forward. So okay, next group. These are the small commercial, but with a demand cost. And this is the group that was essentially underpaying, if you will. Now, for this group, we've gone with a customer charge that is essentially twice what the residential and commercial non-demand is. So they go to 250, these folks go to 5 to 10 to 15 to 20. Then in the energy rates for these customers, they've got this first block of 3,000 kilowatt hours. And then they've got the energy more than 3,000. And you'll notice that the energy goes from 9 cents down to 5. But then the theory in this kind of rate design is that's about the time that you start hitting this demand charge. So that for greater amounts of energy, you're paying the demand charge plus the energy charge of 5 cents. Whereas before that, you're only paying 9 cents. Now, relative to how this, and a lot of customers in this group will get hit sort of differently depending on their usage. Because of the customer charge going from 5 to 10 to 15 to 20, that's a fair amount more on a percentage basis, obviously, for smaller customers. And the real issue in the rate design and the reason that these folks are been sort of underpaying has been the rate design in the over 3,000. So I've left that 9 cent rate flat for the first 3,000. So any customers that are 3,000 and less, the only increase they'll see is because of the customer charge. Whereas then the bigger customers, who are the ones we're getting kind of the bigger break that from a cost of service basis they sort of didn't deserve, a fair amount of the increase then is in that rate. The other thing is that in this class, there's the city and county rates again, but the county folks in this group did not pay more, like the residential and commercial non-demand county pay more, and like the current large commercial pay more. So we've actually then increased the county rates, the energy rates higher, so that we have a consistent differential between city rates and county rates across all of the classes. The other thing is I mentioned the combining some rates. We've got the 1-phase and 3-phase folks, but the rates are exactly the same. So we're basically going to eliminate the 1 and 3-phase differentiation and simply, combine the small commercial city 3-phase with the 1-phase, and likewise for the counties, and just have 2 rates instead of 4. Now, the increases that these folks are going to see, they'll see their big increase the first year. And then after that, their increases will be a little bit more sort of on average. But you can see this kind of big jump here in the second energy charge that first year. Now, in the large commercial, so we've got the city and the county. Now, the issue with the large commercial was that the rate looked very, very similar to the rate for the small commercial, except these folks had the higher energy charge for 10,000 kilowatt hours instead of 3,000, which basically meant if you had a 10,000 kilowatt hour customer in each of the classes, the one in this class paid a lot more than the one in the other class, even though their usages might be exactly the same. And the fact that just because these folks are bigger, because this demand threshold is still at 10 kilowatts. So I'm suggesting that we got to move to the same 3,000 kilowatt hour break point with these folks as we did with the small commercial. And in fact, now the demand and energy rates for the city and the county folks in this class are the same as they are for the small commercial class, but you'll notice that the customer charges for small commercial go from 5 to 20. And now for the large commercial, they go from 25 and up to 100. So the differentiation between the small and the large, and the large customers need a bigger transformer and bigger facility. So they have a higher customer charge. But so these rates are the same for demand and energy, but it's different for the customer charge. And again, we'll take the city 3-phase and roll them in with the city 1-phase. In county, there is just the one group. There is no 3-phase in the county group. And like I said, some of these customers in the first year will actually see a decrease, but it really has to do with the balance of their energy and their demand, sort of how that happens. But a big part is because they've simply been overcharged for 7,000 kilowatt hours month in and month out ever since this rate design was adopted. You got 3 different pump rates. You just have a handful of pump customers, and these aren't irrigators. These are like at some overpasses that have to pump some water when it rains and some things. They're pretty small users. It doesn't really make any sense to have 3 separate rates. And in fact, 2 of the rates are exactly the same. And so essentially we're just lumping all 3 of the pump rates into a single rate.
So Dave, the current rate on the energy charge between the current rate and the 2023 goes up 1.5 cents.
Yes.
Then the next period, it's only 0.2 cents. And then the next period, only 0.1 cent. What's the thought there?
Yeah, the reason there is, one, these energy and demand charges are set to match eventually over time to be the same as what we're seeing. You know, the cost of energy and the cost of demand doesn't really matter a whole lot depending upon size. So we're moving towards having them match the numbers in the small and large commercial demand. Now, the difference here is that they only pay a demand charge over 5 kW instead of over 10, but they're rarely even use that much. So they're mostly in the energy, and this energy rate as a standalone energy rate is just way too low. Your wholesale power costs more than 5.5 cents. So when they're using less than 5 kW, which oftentimes they do, they're only paying 5.5 cents for energy, which basically means you're selling it at a loss.
Gotcha. Yeah. So we're making up for that on the first adjustment or the first period.
Yes, exactly.
Got it.
Because see, in the small commercial, see that first block of energy is 9 cents when it's not associated with demand. And these pump rates, when it's not associated with demand for the first 5, it's only 5.5 cents instead of 9.
Okay.
So over time, we're just trying to fix a few sort of disparities that are kind of buried in the rates that aren't necessarily particularly noticeable unless you're really taking a hard look at them, you know.
Okay, thank you.
The net metering, the only difference with net metering is that you've always had this customer service charge, which makes sense because the idea there was a lot of times you might have solar customers whose net usage is really, really low because they're generating all of their energy themselves. And so you need to get some money from them. Well, actually, the same thing holds true for a regular residential customer who might have just normal, really, really low usage. Now, I'm leaving these customer charges flat until such time as the other ones catch up. And so then by the time we get out here where we're all at $10 then with the net metering as well as with the regular residential and small commercial.
So,
And
hey,
then
Dave,
this, yes.
so just curious, so on the energy purchase, how do you arrive at that figure, that 0.0440?
Yeah. So what I did was I looked at our projection for 2023 for when you buy your wholesale power, there's essentially 2 pieces to it. There are fixed capacity that you pay a fixed amount every month that aren't driven by how much energy you buy. And then there's the energy that you buy. And so relative to purchasing essentially overproduction from your net metering customers, the only real value to you is the energy piece of wholesale. It's really only replacing energy cost for the utility. It doesn't contribute to your demand costs. And so our 2023 projection for energy is at the 4.4 cents, which is what the current purchase rate is. So I just left it flat. And then right now, these numbers going forward are based on what we're projecting wholesale energy will cost going forward. That's obviously not a guarantee, but this is just for when you make purchases when a customer generates more than they need for their own use. And then otherwise, these rates match the residential rates.
So we're not going to pay them more for the energy than what we're paying for the energy from, correct, from our supplier.
Exactly, yes. And then the last piece is just basically you've got some yard lights or security light rates that are a fixed amount per month. And essentially these all more or less go up by the average 3.8%. Although I kept reasonably round numbers. You'll notice everything ends in a 0 or a 5. But that's just sort of an across the board increase as we look at those. And you actually don't even necessarily have customers in all of these categories, but several of the rates are the same. You've got 3 15s and a couple of 30s. So, and these are the way these rates are looked at. They're reasonably assigned. Like this is where you've got basically 3 people. So 3 people together pay $5 each, which is the 15. So, so now when we look at our projected operating results, this is under proposed rates. So we can't do anything about 2022 because it ends in 2 weeks. And then if we implement the new rates, now remember, the rates go up every year. And so essentially what's happening is this net position is just slowly getting better with each increase. So we're almost essentially break even on an operating basis in 2026. But really what's more important is what happens to cash. And now you can see we're starting at about 1.6 million. And with the proposal, we end up at about 1.2 million. And like I said, we wanted to stay north of $1 million. And essentially we're staying above $1 million each of the years here in our projections. So we're kind of increasing to get our position up towards 0 while also maintaining kind of a reasonable cash balance. We take a hit this first year because of the higher capital improvements, but the other thing is you're not sure. These are projections of an average amount of capital, and every extra dollar you might spend in capital would obviously degrade these reserve numbers some more. So, but we're able to do this. We're in a officially in an 8% inflation world, and we're doing it with 3.8% increases in rates. So, now here's some bill comparisons. So I've got the present Morgan City bill, and then I've got the first year of the proposal. So here's that 400 kilowatt hour that you mentioned. You'll notice the bill goes up by $2.58. So $2.50 of it is because of the customer charge, and 8 cents is because of the consumption charge. But that's still below, it's about $1 less than Rocky Mountain's winter rate, and it's about $5.50 less than Rocky Mountain's summer rate currently. And then you can also see at 1,000 and then 2,000 kilowatt hours for residential. You'll see here like a 2,000 kilowatt hour customer, their bill goes up by $2.90. So obviously $2.50 of it is the customer charge and 40 cents is due to consumption. And they're basically in the ballpark of the Rocky Mountain winter rate and well below the Rocky Mountain summer rate when you get up to bigger. But of course, you've got that inverted block, which actually Rocky Mountain does in the summer as well, so that more consumption is more expensive. And 2,000 kilowatt hours is a hefty residential consumption. Now here's that commercial non-demand. They go up a little bit more because they're they're only about 500 kilowatt hours is kind of an average customer. And so they're going up there, but well below Rocky Mountain still. Rocky Mountain Power has has like a $50 customer charge for even small commercial. So you're still $100 less. Then, oops. The small commercial demand, especially now, remember the small commercial demand were the ones that I said were underpaying. But we left the energy rate the same in that first 3,000 kilowatt hours. So on small commercial demand, if they're 2,000 kilowatt hours, their bill only goes up by $5, which is entirely the $5 customer charge in that group. But here's the group that was sort of underpaying. You'll notice that, so this is a 6,000 kilowatt hour with a demand where they're paying for 5 kW of demand. At $460, you can see how much they're currently below Rocky Mountain. Now, they got a $47 increase. That's about a 10% increase that's going to happen the first year. But they're still well below, especially the Rocky Mountain Power summer rate. They're about $70 less than Rocky Mountain Power still. And this is actually one of those large commercials where just in the first year, their bill will actually go down. But you'll see at 1605, they're higher than the Rocky Mountain winter rate. So they're sort of in between. And with the new one, they'll still be just slightly higher than the Rocky Mountain winter rate, but then well below the Rocky Mountain summer. And after the first year, now, you know, sort of all of the classes start to see percentage increases about the same. So it's particularly the bigger small commercial demand and then the large commercial, which we see something that's a bit different from kind of average, if you will. Any questions on this information?
Dave, go ahead, Tony.
I'm just curious about how many of those small commercial customers do we have? Do you know?
You know, I don't have an idea of, you know, how many of those customers are at different usage levels. I really don't.
Okay.
You know, there's a couple of ways to look at this. One, yeah, it's unfortunate, you know, to have their bill go up by $40, but probably since who knows how long, their bill has consistently been, you know, $30 to $40 less than it should have been. And, you know, and that's why you do these studies once in a while, is to try to find the right balance. Because one of the problems is when somebody is underpaying, if you just do across the board percentage increases, then they don't get anywhere near as much increase as they should, and that widens. It's just, you know, sort of algebra. You know, a percentage of a too low number is an even more too low number then. And so the division between the large commercial and the small commercial has probably just been getting wider and wider and wider over time. You know, if you've been doing, you know, kind of that across the board, we need X% more dollar kind of thing. So it really is justified, and it doesn't fix it entirely, but it gets it into a better range relative to the cost of service.
Dave, back to page 14, the cash reserves. We began the year 1.6 million. Any idea, or maybe Ty, you could help answer that. What have we been running in reserves, say, the last 5 years?
I don't have the dollar amount, but it's been steadily declining. That's kind of what prompted the rate study. And if you remember,
Would it have been as high as a couple of million?
yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
at one time.
Yeah, and what happened is it started to decline, and then when we started doing subdivision installations with our crew, it bridged that gap because the price of power, our rate hasn't changed since 2010, and the price of power has gone up consistently every year. And we were starting to get into that negative. Like you can see, we're on a path where every year we chip away at it. We're at a kind of a negative
Okay.
pattern. But when we started doing subdivision installations, it kind of held the line for the last couple years. And now,
Just because we had revenue from that to supplement.
yeah,
Okay.
I can tell you that the end of 2017, you were at about 1.5 million.
Okay.
So, at least over that period, it was, sort of level from the end of 17 to the end of 21.
So you threw out a figure of maybe just a benchmark of $1 million. I mean, how do you arrive at that?
Well, for a utility your size, something in the neighborhood of 40 to 50% of operating revenue is a reasonable kind of amount of reserves to have, based on my experience. The smaller utility is, the higher the percentage should be.
Mhm.
I think that, again, this is always about a balance. And so what we're trying to do is keep your results reasonable, keep your balances reasonable without having to have too big of a rate increases. I mean, it'd be easy to say, we'd like to be at $2 million. Well, then it's going to be a 7% increase or something, every year instead of 3.8. So it's always a balance on where you're at. In my view, these are what I would consider kind of minimum levels of reserves. They're not overly concerning, but having it get down to 35 and 30 and 25% of revenue would start to be concerning. And you can see that, to bring that up, either takes a really big increase or kind of chipping away at it over time. And, you haven't raised rates in 12 years. So, it's just time to start addressing that. I mean, you've done a great job of, to go 12 years without a rate increase. I mean, that, and to still be in reasonable shape is quite commendable. But, sometimes one of the downsides is your customers get used to that. And then all of a sudden, my rates go up every year, with the service that I have. So
the other part of that, Dave, is we just finished rehabbing our third substation, and so operationally we're in pretty good shape as far as the system.
As future capital outlays.
Yeah.
So, I guess a little bit of concern on my part is I think we're heading into some pretty strong headwinds when it comes to either capital expenses or energy acquisition costs. And looking at the proposal, Dave, it's well done and well put together, and I think very reasonable. But I'm wondering if we need to be a little bit more aggressive, if you will, just because of uncertainty in the market.
Hold that thought about uncertainty in the market, because we got one more thing to talk about. Okay?
What's that? Say that again.
We have one more thing to talk about, and your comment about uncertainty in the market is the perfect segue.
Perfect.
All right.
I did that just for you.
I just planted a shell. He just did it perfectly.
Yeah, that was
okay. So we talked about this the last time relative to a purchase power adjustment clause. Now, the rates that we just looked at, which is actually Exhibit 4-A in the report, those do not have a purchase power adjustment clause incorporated into the rate. We've made an assumption about the cost of wholesale power, which is a big, is by far your largest expense going forward. And, so that's obviously a big wild card in your results, because, who knows? Natural gas just came down to about $7.50 the last 2 days, but prior to that, we hit $9.50 last week. And it's more than doubled in the last year, the price of natural gas, which has a big impact on market cost of energy. So one of the things is that if we adopt a purchase power adjustment clause, and I'll tell you that actually both Brigham and Lehigh just adopted them. They did not have them in the past. And in the last month, they both chose to implement this. So there's an Exhibit 4-C that looks just like the numbers that we were just looking at for the proposed rates. The difference is after 2023, when you look at the energy rates, you'll see that they're different, just the energy consumption rates, not the customer charges or the demand charges. They're different than the rates in 4A. That's because the cost of wholesale power, there's an adjustment clause. It's actually the last line item in Exhibit 4C that would be added to everybody's bill. Now, in the first year for 2023, that number would be 0 because we've estimated for next year and it would be 0. But then what would happen is in all the years in the future, we would adjust based on where wholesale power costs are. So that the number that shows up, and I actually don't have that table in my presentation, but in your reports, if you go to the last page of the report, at the bottom, you'll see a per kilowatt hour purchase power adjustment clause. That is projected. That is not something that you would set for all those years today. You would set it for 0 for 2023. And then I will provide staff with a spreadsheet to calculate every year what that should be. So that if wholesale power cost goes up a lot more than you think it will, it'll automatically get adjusted for in the purchase power adjustment clause. So if you look at the energy rates in each of the classes in Exhibit 4C and add in that purchase power adjustment clause, the last line, those rates then all equal the rates shown in Exhibit 4A. So that if purchase power costs do exactly what we think they will do through 2026, which I guarantee you they won't, then the rates would be the same as if you implemented 4A. But what this does is it protects the utility if rates go up more than expected, and it protects the customers if rates go up slower than expected, because then the purchase power adjustment clause would be less than what we're anticipating. And basically it keeps everybody sort of neutral with regard to that. And then the actual published rate, if you will, is more about covering a certain amount of purchase power plus all of the local expenses.
So in that light, as I say, during the course of a year, if you had large increases in power come the end of the year, are you trying to recoup those purchases, or do you just look at what you'd expect going forward to
It's actually both. So,
okay.
So like I said, for 2023, we have an estimate of wholesale power to be 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour. I mean, well, actually that was for fiscal 22 is what we were thinking. For 23, it's higher than that. So at the end of 23, we look back and see how much we might have missed.
Okay.
If we over collected or under collected, that would be added into the, plus we look forward and make an estimate for the following year. And then if it's going to be higher or lower than expected, that also goes into it. So we're always fixing our miss for last year and collecting for what we estimate for next year. And so, you know, that'll always impact ultimately your reserve levels. You know, if you over collected during the previous year, reserves will be higher than they would have been, but then you sort of give that back over the next year by lowering the adjustment clause to make up for the over collection. So it's a self-adjusting on an annual basis, looking both back and forward.
So in your 4C exhibit here, your purchase power agreement, all energy.
Yeah.
So 2023, you got 0024, 004. That's just a guess you're making there, or that's
Well,
just
for 23, it should be 0.
right?
Yeah, and for 24, then there's a number.
Right, it's 00.24, then 20.
Yes, and that is a guess, just like the wholesale power costs that went into Exhibit 4A are a guess. The difference is we'll calculate a new number before 2024 to replace the gas.
Okay, that's just an estimate.
That's just an estimate. And that's why I said, if you add that number to like the residential energy rate, it'll equal the rates that are shown in 4A, because they both sets of rates have the same gas.
Okay, that makes
It's
sense.
just that in 4A, if you miss the gas, then you got to come back and actually change the rates rather than just changing the adjustment clause.
Yeah.
If we lined up 10 utilities similar to Morgan in scope and size, how many would use an adjustment clause?
Well, they're very, very common. I will tell you that every investor-owned utility in the country uses one, including Rocky Mountain Power. They call it an energy balancing account, but it's the same thing.
Okay.
A lot of Utah utilities have not, because both the UAMPS members and the UMPA members have actually really had a nice run of pretty consistent wholesale power costs the last 10 years. Spanish Fork has always had one, but most of the Utah utilities that I work with have not. But with the changes of what's happening now, with transmission getting more expensive, with energy rates and market rates going up, with all of the sort of uncertainty that's being caused by the increased influx of renewables, with the drought reducing water in coming out of the WAPA dams, and with the potential for closing coal-fired units, it's getting to be literally the Wild West out there for wholesale energy, whereas in the past, it's just been nice and steady and calm, if you will.
Gary, does Layton use a clause?
Layton, we're Rocky.
They're
Mountain.
Rocky Mountain.
Okay, all right, gotcha.
Well, even coal's gone sky high here lately.
Well, that's right. It has, because all of a sudden, those pesky laws of physics have said we need the energy from coal. And so, even most environmentalists are still like to keep the lights on.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah, it's funny how quickly it changes, because a year or two ago, you couldn't give away natural gas and coal was cheap and natural gas was going to be plentiful and cheap forever, and things change.
And it's funny, you can see how the balance is very sort of intricate, because the price came down about $2 because of a fire at a liquefied natural gas export depot in Texas. So all of a sudden our our sales went down by like 2% because of the inability to export out of one terminal, and the price dropped $2. So, I think we're in for a wild ride in the volatility. The thing is that gas companies, even if they could, they aren't exploring anymore, because they think that the country's trying to put them out of business. So they're making money while they can, but they're not taking excess profit, if you will, and investing it in future assets. They're doing other things with it, mostly distributing to shareholders, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, now that, so when we did that 1.2 as the target, it was under the other assumption, because things were so bad. Could we, and it's not on the agenda for tonight, but could we put in 1.5 million reserves and see what that does to the overall rate with the same customer charge?
Well, it would be overall, let's see, we're sitting at, so you want about 300,000 more dollars then?
Yeah, let's
To
see
get this
what it does.
1.2 up to 1.5?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm kind of just following up on David's
Yeah.
question, right?
All right, I'm doing a
just to get
dangerous
an
thing.
idea.
I'm doing a dangerous thing. I'm doing some quick math. So about $300,000 over about 4 years of revenue, which would be about 8 million or so of sales revenue, would be about another 3.8% on top of the 3.8. And it's one time. So if you raise every year So if the first year you went up by like 7.6 and then 3.8 every year after that, we'd probably be in about the $1.5 million range.
Well, could you spread that out over the 5 years rather than the lump sum at the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, we could do, some average amount,
Mhm. Yeah, fair enough.
and maybe instead of 3.8, it's 4.5 or something.
Yeah,
every
or,
year.
yeah, 4 points.
Yeah, again, can't hold
So
me
on
to
that
those numbers.
percentage, so on that percentage basis, if we went on that customer charge to $5 the first year, would that almost accomplish that percentage?
I would suggest that I would do it over time to try to get there, and I would do it in the consumption rates. I really would.
Yeah, I mean, could you split it between a customer charge and the rate increase?
Well, because right now we've done, particularly residential, we've done almost all of it in the customer charge. So if you wanted to do more, I would do it then in the consumption charge.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I asked that is because we once had a $5 charge, right? So that's.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So
Well, we're going up to 10 though, eventually.
if you had that purchase power option agreement though in place, you're still were looking at what, 1.2 million at the end of 5 years?
Well, we're thinking maybe looking at 1.5. instead
But
of-
the adjustment clause won't help you increase that. It'll help you more assure that you would get to the target.
Right, exactly. But still, if that was in place, it would be more of a guarantee that you would get to your target than if you didn't have it in place.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fair.
See what I'm saying? So.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that statement completely.
Either sleep well knowing you had 1.5 million, or you could sleep well knowing you had that adjustment in.
Well, and for what it's worth, in 2018, you were at 1.3 million in the electric fund. I'm just looking at audits.
And some of those are when we borrowed money.
The electrical fund, Dave, used to be the cash cow of.
Right.
of
Well, we borrowed from it for the other
Borrowed from it, it
projects.
was just,
Yeah.
it was the bank.
Yeah.
And, but that's just,
Yeah, it's been the bank, but not that we need it for that in particular, but
Yeah, right.
just the comfort level. I'd like to see maybe a little bit of a review at 1.5 at the end of 5 years.
Yeah, I can run some numbers.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
And maybe do that for the next, so the next time we have actually the public hearing at the next meeting, because we needed to notice that for 2 weeks out. I think that's a good idea, to do the 1.5 million, just to see what that.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, and
what
see
that
what's
looks like. And
happening,
it's-
what's happening in your reserve funds too is, so when I compare 2018 to 2021 end of year, water was 266,000 and now it's 0. Sewer was 1.3 million and now it's 600,000. And then electric was 1.3 million and then it was up to 1.6. But basically your total of water, sewer, and electric at the end of 21 was about 2.2 million. At the end of 2018 combined, it was about 3 million. So you have been, diminishing overall reserves from over the last 3 years.
Well, let's do that. We'll take one more look at it.
Yeah, I'll do another set of options for you to look at if we did 1.5 million.
Thank you.
Any more? We'll have to close this work meeting and start our next general meeting. Thank you very much, Dave, and
Yeah, appreciate all your help and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll I'll be working with staff and we'll be in touch.
Good deal.
All right, I'll stop sharing and
Thank you.
bid you a good evening.
Thank you.
Good night.
How you doing, Jeff? Can you hear me, Jeff?
Yeah. How's everybody doing?
Good, good.
Good.
I just did it right. Is that what you said? Yeah, me too. Let's go to truth and taxation. Let's go. Let's go. to truth and taxation. Let me look up a little, so it's a good thing.
We're okay.
I think so. I hate not to be, you know, this is some of the.
Yes.
And next time.
Yeah.
But if you guys can keep rolling along, Dave. My last night with my daughter.
So that makes sense.
It's 1 week at home.
Some of it does.
My house did burn down.
Denise, can you still hear me? It's not recording, but. Might be on mute.
Go to Alaska.
Yes.
Hey, Jeff,
Saturday, same.
are you available on the 28th?
This is
Okay, Jeff, will you be here on the
Norwegian,
28th?
different shit.
He's gone.
Denise, I don't have anything on my calendar now. I'll just make it.
Okay. How about you, Dave?
I plan on being here.
Okay. So if I have to,
Steve, I won't be to the planning meeting.
Okay.
Just telling Jeff, Mary used to make me go on a cruise to
Oh,
Alaska.
Oh, I feel the.
She twisted my arm. So we'll get that done next week.
Perfect.
I'll mention it to Tony and see if he can fill in.
Clark is a guest. Would you do our pledge when we're ready?
What's that?
Would you do the pledge when we're ready?
Oh, you bet.
Okay.
I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome to the Morgan City Council meeting, June 14th, 2022. Before we begin, Ty, I'm going to ask you a question. Ty's gone.
Just turn this camera off.
Mike's off, he's.
Okay. Well, we'll catch up on that later.
He's at the Cumberland River.
Nope.
Sorry, I'm here.
Okay,
I had to go get my water.
another refill?
Yep.
Would you like to put item 2 in the work meeting? Would you like to put that at the first in our active agenda?
That's up to you. I can just do it under,
Want to do it under reports or?
well, I think it's probably, you could amend the agenda and put it for discussion maybe under sooner, because then if council members need to leave, somebody was telling me that they needed to leave early.
Now Jeffrey's left and we still have a quorum, so.
Oh, Jeffrey left already. Okay.
Yes.
So whenever you would like to discuss it, but
So we can put it above item A in the active agenda?
yeah, and just for discussion.
What's that?
You can move it from the work meeting into the active agenda wherever you want to place it. So
Okay.
Mhm.
That take a motion or is that just a
it's the prerogative of the mayor.
thing we can do, huh?
Well, you're
Lot of
going to
power,
approve the meeting agenda. Just do it then. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Same with fiscal year budgets, I suppose.
Okay. Again, welcome, everybody. We've got Clark actually going to lead us in the pledge. And Dave's going to offer our prayer.
Rise. Join us in the fitting pledge of
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, we're gathered before thee as we commence the Morgan City Council meeting. We're thankful for the opportunity we have to come together, for the service that we are able to provide our community. We're thankful for this wonderful valley that we live in. We appreciate the peace and safety that we enjoy. We ask a blessing to be upon the affairs of our meeting tonight, that we might make decisions that are in the proper order and benefit of the residents of Morgan City. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Okay, has everybody looked over today's meeting agenda and we have an approval on it with one change?
Do we want to change the fiscal year budgets also, drop those down?
Yeah,
Okay, well,
so we'd add the tax rate and the budget. Put them above A.
So I'd move, Mayor, that we approve the meeting's agenda with the change of work meeting items 2 and 3, review of certified tax rate, and 2022, 2023 fiscal year budgets to be considered in the active agenda.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Now, with no second, we could go home.
He'll die.
Hey, wait.
You guys waiting for down here, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. What'd you do that for?
Okay, Denise, those changes, we'll move on now. Has everybody looked over the minutes of May 10th? In the work meeting and I had a question. Is that something we can we can approve all in one motion?
If we do.
Okay, great. Okay. So May 10th, May 24th, and then the warrants of 5/20/22 to 6/10/22. Is there any discussion or?
Mayor? Mayor, I make a motion that we approve of the city council work meeting minutes for May 10th, 2022, the city council meeting minutes for May 10th, 2022, the city council work meeting minutes for May 24th, 2022, the city council meeting minutes of May 24th, 2022, and the warrants from May 20th, 2022 through June 10th, 2022.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Denise, do we have anybody comments that you know of? Okay, let's move on to the tax rate budget. Or the certified tax rate review.
Ty, introduce that.
Want to have me take that?
Yes.
Okay, so we got the certified tax rate, which usually comes in June, which is always like after we've done the budget. It came in at, I think there's a paper here in the packet I'm just trying to get to. I just did a similar thing that I did last year just to kind of show the difference. Of course, this year it recognizes some of the new growth, which is good, since we've had so many new homes and that sort of thing. But the rate continues to decline. So if we adopt the certified tax rate, we generate, it's based on generating 418,000, and then the rate goes from 0.001471 to 0.001135. And then I've just put some options. You can, if you hold this exact same rate that we had last year, it would generate $540,000. And then kind of middle of the road was option 3. So anything other than the certified tax rate would cause a truth in taxation hearing. And then I think I put in here kind of middle of the road one. You know, if we went 0.001223, it would generate 450,000. And then did I not put the truth in taxation notice? I put a sample. Denise, did I give you a sample letter, what that would look like for the?
I forgot to put it in.
Okay, I'll quit looking for it. That's good to know. Let me see if I can find that. If I remember right, on a home of $450,000, that option 3, I think, was about $23. It would increase their taxes by $23 per year. So that's kind of the options. I think in my in the general fund notes, I kind of described just kind of the issue. We this year it doesn't really hurt us to just go with the certified tax rate because we don't have any large purchases. We always have more needs than we have funds in the general fund. If you remember, the capital improvement list is pretty extensive. Every one of those projects needs matching money. Of course, we wait till we get tax money, or I mean, grants. So it's a percentage issue versus a dollar amount. But if we ever had to, generate a couple $100,000 more to buy property or basically fund more our portion of the bridge, it could result in a huge tax increase in a future year. So if you want to incrementally keep up, there's some cities that just do truth and taxation every single year. It doesn't require that you do the increase, but it just, that process, they just get used to doing that. And then if you do incremental 7 or 8% tax increases, it generates more revenue over time, but it keeps the city from having to do a 50 or 100 or 150% increase in any one given year, if we have one of those large expenditure items hit us.
So Ty, I have a question. We were you and I were chatting the other day. Did I understand you to say that if we was to go with the recommended certified tax rate, that it would only reduce most people's tax by about $28 a year? Is that what you told me?
It would not affect they would pay the exact same.
No, if we adopted the 2022 certified tax rate, your taxes would actually go down a bit, right?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
And did you tell me that would be about $28? Is that what you said, or did I misunderstand you?
That's what I'm trying to find. I did
That would be option. Yes, approved it. Yeah. But if we did if we do option 2, your tax rate would be exactly the same as it was last year, but you would have to have a truth in taxation, correct?
If you did the certified tax rate, what you actually paid would be the exact same as the previous year. If you did option 3, then what you would pay if your home was valued at $450,000, then you would pay $25 more for the year on that same valuation. That's what I'm trying to find is the notice that I pulled up. But are you saying what on option 2, if we held the exact same rate?
Yeah.
It would be more than that for the year. What we were talking about was the last time when we did that truth and taxation hearing and we held the same rate. That was very similar that year because that was only an $8,000 difference. And that's why that year I was like, we got to hold the same rate. This is kind of dumb, but I ran a truth and taxation, just a sample notice, and now I can't find it where I saved it. I might have just printed it. Just to give you an idea. So anyway, it's more, it's up to you which direction you want to go. If you want to just keep doing certified tax rate, let the rate float down. If you want to do middle of the road and it's not a decision tonight, it's just what to propose. So we know for the next meeting, we'll either adopt the certified tax rate or we will decide to have a truth and taxation hearing, and it'll put us on a different budget schedule.
But even if we kept the same certified tax rate with the property values, it would generate another $135,000. Is that correct?
Yeah.
From 2020 actual.
Yep.
I gave that notice to the mayor, Tice, so they can pass it down the line there. I need to look at it.
Okay, thanks so much. I could just pull up the website, and if anybody would like to know, what the notice would say for any rate in between there or dollar amount, I could run those scenarios on the,
So is what I'm looking at option 3?
Yes.
Yeah, it would, well, it had to have to be, because if it was option 2, it'd be the same rate, right?
yeah, so I just logged into the system
Yeah, that's option 3.
again. So at option 3, the truth and taxation hearing, is that the one I printed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that the one you're looking at? Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so that just gives you an idea. And what did it say the annual dollar amount would increase would be?
150,000.
No, to a homeowner.
Oh,
24 bucks.
24? Okay, that's what I couldn't remember.
It'd go from 312 to 336.
That's on a $500,000 home.
Oh, and it was based on 500.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I think in the, I think on my paper, I put based on oh, I didn't put anything on that first paper. So $500,000 home, it'd be 24 bucks to do option 3. So
I'd either go for option 2 or 3.
and I guess, the other thing is, I guess if there's zero interest, then I think that's kind of what I'm looking for tonight, is just to see which path we want to go on. If there's interest in exploring a couple of the different options other than the certified tax rate, we could just be prepared for that. You don't have to adopt anything else. It just means we're on a different cycle, right? It means we don't do the final budget until August.
Well,
And you can still do truth and taxation hearing, get the, see how people feel about it, but we would actually you would propose a rate, have the hearing, and then you're not bound to adopt it at that point. You can still say, okay, we'll just go back to certified tax rate, or, you just have to have that August 17th.
are you just sort of looking for some direction from us tonight, Ty? Is that what?
Yeah, just to put it out there, since I got the rate before the final budget was due, and then Denise and I can work together on if there's any interest in anything other than the certified tax rate, then we would kind of look to put the
But we still got to do the truth and tax.
proposal together. Yeah.
Would it be ethical to mention what Jeffrey's option choice would have been prior to his leaving the meeting? He told me could I give you his opinion?
Is that okay, Gary?
Yeah, Jeffrey wanted me to make it known. He liked option 2. He liked to just keep the rate the same and go through a truth and taxation. So for his sake, I'll put that out there.
I'd follow that same sentiment.
Okay.
I'm pretty
So-
comfortable with that as well.
Yeah. So we're not making
This
we're
isn't
not
a-
adopting the rate. What we're saying is,
Direction Ty's gonna head.
yeah. So we'll just look at that schedule.
Okay.
We'll still have to maybe do something in the next meeting to that effect.
We'll go through all this stuff, but we're just giving him the direction to go.
Yeah, Ty, I've got a comment before we move
Okay.
forward, but I think
Sure.
my position would be similar to the one that I've taken the last couple of years, and that is understanding the certified tax rate procedure. The reason we've got such a low rate is because we've got more revenue that we're generating. I look at it and I see over the past 5 years, the highest percent increase in dollars that we've ever received. That coupled with an idea that I've always felt before that we need a specific purpose. I'd prefer a specific purpose for a tax increase. In other words, here's 135 that's going towards a bridge, and because of that, we're not going to have to bond for as much, but something that we've thought through. And then we talk each year, I mean, we never quite get to it, but we talk each year about cities that will raise their taxes incrementally just because of inflation. That could be a program that would say we're doing truth in taxation every year because of our program to stay, solvent and so forth. So my feeling would be that we'd stay with just the tax rate as it's been proposed.
Okay. No, that's fair. And then, on the budget discussion, not to jump too far ahead, but the new budget does include, I think $160,000 of appropriation of beginning balance. That we have the fund balance there. It's just, but you want it tied to a project, and that's, that's fair.
David, I guess I rather not do the increase just to do an increase.
Well, it's not waste. Yeah, it's not wasted money.
Uses for it, and I understand that. We can spend it and we can say, oh, it's tagged for this or it's tagged for that, but you could find uses, at a 50% tax increase and still, it would still be legitimate.
Yeah, what I would say to that is anything that we generate over what the current proposed budget is targeted to transfer to capital improvement budget for the bridge, for those expenditures. So like last year, we transferred 600,000. So it's not for nothing. And if we generate more revenue, I'm not just going to spend more revenue. It just, I would transfer it to the capital improvements, for those future expenses. But I understand where you're coming from. And that's a total council decision, right? It could be, well, I'd rather wait until we really do need the money and do 150% tax increase. That's as long as, or 100% tax increase, depending on what that dollar amount is in any one given year, or,
I think just for general amounts for running general government, 8% increase considering inflation is reasonable.
Well, and that 8% isn't 8% on the current residents. It's 8% because of all of the new.
Correct. It's 8% we received last year.
Right. So we're revenue neutral. What we're saying is everyone's still, it's not a tax increase to the current residents. It's we're recognizing that we've had growth with the new homes built and the new property tax that they're generating. So
it's exactly what the program wants to do. That's what the state wants, is to keep it neutral so that when we get all this growth, when we get increases in property values, we're not receiving windfalls. But similarly, it benefits us that when property taxes drop, as in the season 15 years ago, the tax rate, the certified rate goes up so that we have a consistent stream of income. It's it's there regardless of whether values are going up or down, for example, on real property.
Yep. Gotcha. So that's good perspective.
So can I just add maybe a different view of it? If I had more customers come to me in my business during a year and it generated more income, it still was an expense that you have to figure in because of the new growth. Do you get what I'm saying? I mean, it's good to have new growth, but it also is going to have an impact on, say, streets or expenses that just come naturally with growth, the same way it would in a business. If you did 1.5 million one year and 2 million the next year, I promise you, you don't see a $500,000 increase in your bank. It costs you a lot more to do it. And I believe Gary, I talked to you a little earlier, and you're kind of, with Layton City, they kind of keep it a little bit at a time instead of a future that you don't know what's coming up, and then you have to increase it a large amount.
Yeah, they're actually debating the same question right now that you're talking about. Because the cost of living this year, 80% of your budget is personnel, and the cost of living is increasing by what, 8% is what the bank showed.
You know, and that makes sense. I could picture a 8% cost of living increase in tax rates every year, but then it's a program that we say ahead of time, this is what we're going to do. Isn't that what Layton does?
That's, what they're doing is choosing, when we actually did the tax rate every year, just held to the tax rate, it actually was a significant bump in taxes is what it ended up being. Not every year, but there are some years where you'll notice that the accounting did a line item and ended up in showing exactly what it would have amounted to. It would have amounted to much more if we hadn't have chosen to just do a small increment every year, like if you did 3.5% a year, that would accumulate over the years, and then you'd be prepared for the 8% bump.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's our answer, but we've never gotten to that.
It's just another approach.
Right.
Well, there are cities that actually stick to the tax rate, but it's good to know what the bottom line is when you do that as well. To know exactly what your taxing.
The hard part is that the value of the property goes up. That's why it's more expensive. But I imagine transformers are a lot more, meters are a lot more, everything's.
Where did we start out on the bridge project?
2.5.
$3 to $3.5 million, like somewhere in that neighborhood?
3.8. It was 3.8 when we
Where are
started.
we today?
5.5.
That's kind of the selling point to me.
We're about $2.5 million short.
Cover
no,
$2 million.
No, but it's 135,000. It's
Right. Well, then let's think through it and let's say, okay, we're going to need to borrow $2 million and 135 less that we borrow is worth our time. Let's go for it.
Yeah.
But we've thought through it. It's been a process that we've come up with ahead of time.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe just when I was just listening to that cost of living, that 8.1 that's on that chart is not a cost of living increase. That's a zero. That's a zero increase. Yeah.
Right. It's just the dollars more that we got, although it is the highest out of 6-7 years.
Well, and that's recognizing the increase in new growth. So we've had
when
we
need that because like Steve says, we've got additional expenses.
Which Dave is exactly what we could do. We could say if we need to bond for $2 million for the bridge, now we don't need to bond for $2 million. We need to bond for.
Yeah, but we've thought through it. I mean, we said 135 is arbitrary at this point. Maybe it needs to be 400. Maybe it needs to be 600 increase in taxes so that we get this better deal on the bond or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the things we could do is I don't have an estimate of buying the North Morgan.
To generate 35,000. They're not going to see an increase on the Morgan City portion of that property tax. You know what I mean? So I guess that's maybe how I look at it.
It's easy to, in my mind, to get into a trap. Here's 135. We've got it. Now we'll go spend it. Next year it's 135. We got it. Now we'll go spend it. I mean, where do we stop?
But I think we have legitimate reasons, places to spend it. I mean, when we
there's always places to spend it that are legitimate and worthy and worthwhile.
Sure.
Very much so. But again, the state comes along and says, you're not going to, here's the program so that you don't get in those traps. Here's the program that says it's reduced because your values went up.
Yeah, the state's purpose is just so that we're every year have a a transparent process. That's what the truth in taxation, it's not because they don't want us to generate more or, cover our costs. It's just that they want us to have that
Yeah, but I think
process.
in that light, it lets a resident, a taxpayer know that there's an increase coming rather than just, I mean, again, that transparency, that's
Mhm, yep.
all part of the process and, we understand that.
Yeah. So that's one thing I could do is, I could tie, because we're definitely underfunded, and I could pick a project that we don't have funding for. I'm doing the best I can with grants. Buying property is the most difficult. There's never any grant money for that.
Mhm.
I could, in between now and August, I'll probably have the appraisal on the property for the North Morgan, and we could definitely tie it to, buying that property and
Mhm.
and go that direction if that's to me,
Would it need
every
to
dollar
be-
we spend is appropriate because that's why you hired me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm okay, like I said, either way. It's just if there's an interest, or if that's something that you're saying is like, hey, let's do truth and taxation, but let's tie it to a specific expense. I could do that as well.
I'm okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
I'm okay with that as well.
Yeah. I'm okay with that, Ty.
But the reason I haven't is because, like what Tony's scenario was, is we're short 2.5 million just on the bridge itself. And so until that project goes to bid, I don't know what the actual is. And so we would be saying for the bond payment, this is how much. We wouldn't be saying we're going to try and do $2.5 million increase, right, in one budget year, which is say,
That's
what's that bond expense?
borrow, the big.
What's that annual payment? And then that's what it would be tied to. So, we could either just prepare for that, or I could tie it to something more specific. But like, we're not going to have that. The bridge, we're not going to know what that payment is until
Mhm.
the beginning of, or the middle of the budget year. The North Morgan, I could just go ahead and get that appraisal on the property done and have a really good ballpark on what that property is going to cost us, and tie it to, just tie it to that if you'd like.
Ty, I guess I'd feel a little better tying it to something that we haven't yet committed. Is there anything out there on a wish list that says?
We've got like well, and that's another discussion item is
community.
Our whole capital improvement list is unfunded. Right. So, of course, we're not going to do all of them unless I just kind of wait till I can get grant money.
Mhm.
That's what determines, but just when I do a project or not this year, all of the projects we've done, it's because we had 2 sidewalk grants. We've got a grant for the basement. We got a grant for the depot. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing the project.
Mhm.
If that makes sense.
Well, we honestly have some pretty big hits in the future. If you,
Yeah.
on the
We got a lot.
Bridge,
That's
the property, the 1.5 million gallon tank.
That's the North Morgan tank.
Yes,
That's something we're going to talk about later in the agenda, is
But
whether or not to pull the
maybe
trigger
we
on
need
that or not.
500 for the North Morgan tank. So, it's. So here's a
I-
question, Ty. I mean, say you adopt or Gary, you adopt the rate today, and 6 months from now, we decide we need additional funding for the North Morgan. Can we only, for the water, for the tank, can we only expect to raise taxes one time during the year? Are there other opportunities, other times that you can?
On property taxes, it's a once a year cycle, because it's not until the property is assessed by the assessor. So it's basically a county process. We adopt the rate, but it's an annual cycle. You pay as you go. You don't do it mid-year. So you just, one year you just go short, and then you raise it by X amount the next year. That's the discussion point, right? Like, do you I mean, I'll do whatever I can to keep getting grant money and
Yeah, I mean, again, it just seems to me that if we're saying here's 135, it adds $24 onto a residence. That's more just our day-to-day operating money, if you will. And that, to me, is why the state puts into place their program to change the rate so that we keep a consistent operating amount.
well, it sounds like it's worth the discussion and the hearings and then whether we, you know, I'll look at the,
Before, didn't we go through a motion process?
well, that would be the next meeting. We're just preparing.
Okay.
That's
Well-
why it was a work session item, is because it'll be a decision, the certified tax rate will be on the
Well,
next agenda. But it helps me know what to
Yeah, out of three of us,
prepare for.
it looks like is this fair to say, Tony and Eric could be aligned similarly and David would
I think so.
be apart from that? That gives you some direction then, Ty.
Yeah, so the reason I had it under work session this time is just because if across the board, everyone's like, you know, I don't care. I ran on never raising taxes and I just want the certified tax rate across the board, then that's easy. I know, but if there's discussion and some, you know, potential for option, you know, some other option, and then, you know, we could run different scenarios than the option 3 too. Anyway, that was the whole point of having it.
Yeah,
just on the work
good
session.
discussion.
Yeah. It'll let
Appreciate
me
the
know if there's-
information, the grid that you had there with previous rates and so forth.
Yeah, now we know, and it helps me. The other thing is that 500 or that 400, I didn't go see what, I have to go see what the average property value is for the city, because that's what you put into the truth and taxation notice. And so I will go do some more homework on that. And then also I'll look at getting that appraisal done before the August,
That's good.
you know, deadline, just so you know, here's this current year, big purchase that's not funded at this point, so.
So we
Sounds
can
good.
move on without a motion.
Yep.
Head nod. Do we want to spend just a minute on item 3 in the work meeting? Fiscal year's budgets?
Yeah, because we just kicked the can down the road.
Well, and
Yeah.
just if there's any comments, I did type up for the general fund a page of notes like I did on the amended budget. So last time when we did the amended budget, it seemed like there was more comments about the tentative or, you know, the future budget. And I hadn't gone through all of the analysis, and now I've been able to do that. And so if there's anything on those notes, I'd be willing to
I'd have
answer any
some
questions.
Ty, but you know, I talked to you there earlier and said maybe you and I could get together. I don't know that I'd need to bring them up here, but certainly
Okay.
before our next meeting, before the adoption.
Sure.
Save us a little time tonight. Eric's all for that, right?
I'm all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully the notes were
Yeah, the notes were very
Useful. It's
good.
not-
Thank you.
not every single line item, just kind of significant points of discussion. I tried to.
I'd find a question, I'd go back to the notes and it was answered. So good work.
Okay. So we can move along to item A. Power pole line attachment agreement between Morgan City Corporation and West Corporation, doing business as CenturyLink. Resolution 2224.
Want me to take that one, Mayor?
Yeah.
So, is it franchise agreement or just pole attachment?
Should be the pull, yeah.
Pull. Yeah, so we've been working with CenturyLink, and as a utility, we didn't have a franchise agreement or a pole attachment agreement. So over there on the commercial street realignment project, got into a little bit of back and forth on who pays for what when you realign a utility. And we didn't have any agreements in place. And so this allows them to be on our pole, when it's aerial. And it's the same agreement, I think, that we have with Utopia and the other providers at the same rate. We just didn't have one for CenturyLink.
How many agreements do we have? You say we have one.
So we have Utopia, we have one with All West. We used to have one with Comcast. I don't think that that's there. I don't know if we have one with Beehive or not, but it doesn't matter because Utopia bought out Beehive. But basically anybody that attaches a line door pole needs to have an agreement and pay an annual assessment. So.
Mhm. I have a couple of questions. First one's for Gary. In the agreement, it talks about the transfer of the agreement. Company shall not transfer this agreement or any interest to another person and so forth. That's on page 9, number 8. But then we back up to page 2, grant of non-exclusive and conditional consent. Two parts to that question there. What's a non-exclusive franchise versus an exclusive, I suppose, on page 2 at the bottom?
So all entities that provide telecommunication services have a right to a franchise agreement with us, and that would be the non-exclusive
Okay.
feature of this.
All these other entities that we've done that for.
Like All West, Utopia, none of them have exclusive franchise. They're all
Okay.
non-exclusive. And
Allowing another one to have a similar agreement. Okay.
according to whatever we dictate as to where they should be located on that line.
Mhm. But then it goes on to say in that conditional consent part, let's see, and operation of the company's communication systems and to acquire, construct, operate, maintain, replace, this is about the middle of it, use, install, remove, repair, reconstruct, inspect. And then here it says sell, lease, and transfer. That seems to be in conflict.
Okay, tell me what line you're on, or what.
Page
number you're on.
2, item,
Middle of that paragraph, Gary.
Okay,
item 2.
sorry, I just barely brought it up here. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it right there.
City can, has granted to the company a non-exclusive franchise, which includes the conditional right, privilege to construction, operation, company's communication system, and to acquire, construct, operate, maintain, and replace, use, install, remove, et cetera. I don't know that you could get any more adjectives, but there they are. Or to otherwise utilize in a lawful manner all necessary equipment. City hereby grants to company a non-exclusive right. Direct, operate, or maintain. And is it just below that, David, that you're talking about?
Can you,
Okay.
yeah, it says we can sell, lease, or transfer to otherwise you utilize in any lawful manner all necessary equipment and facilities.
To like Beehive had the original lines up there, but then Utopia bought basically the lines on the poles from Beehive and took them over.
Yeah, I
What
think
that's referring to, Gary.
I think number 8 references that.
Because the bottom line is, sometimes there's lines up there that somebody will come in and purchase or buy
Right.
and then reuse those lines for existing communications or something.
Yeah, we've
Isn't
had
that correct,
happen
Clark?
twice, right? One's
Yeah.
with Comcast and another one with,
Right. And
Yeah,
number 8
Beehive.
there on page
Beehive
9 allows
Comcast.
for that.
Beehive Comcast were kind of combined. They kind of took it over. Comcast kind of bailed and Beehive bought them out.
They kind of bought the lines.
Topia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they retain that right, I guess, to have that placement or have that spot on the pole. And then they would just assume that agreement that we have with them, only changing the name of whoever that provider is. So that's kind of what we're in with right now with Utopia. CenturyLink, kind of a different animal in the fact that they've always been, well, it's either been them or who CenturyLink purchased them from. Now they're kind of transferring to Loomis, which is still similar company.
Mhm.
They're just kind of phasing out one name and bringing in the other one. And I know with the other utilities, we've designated where they attach at. We've agreed with them how much they'll pay each year to have that spot. And then, of course, there's requirements for when they do attachments, when they do extensions, they've got to notify, they've got to design, they've got to attach certain equipment to sturdy our poles, more guys or whatever. And like I say, CenturyLink has been a somewhat of a challenge when you work with them. So it's good we're getting everything worked out.
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't had an agreement prior. That seemed like they'd be one of the first ones we do it with.
I can explain.
Okay.
A bit of that. CenturyLink has never thought that they were subject to any franchise to any city
Oh, is that right?
because they believe that they were there first. They refused to sign a franchise agreement with Layton. The only one they have signed a franchise agreement with that I'm aware of, and there may be more, but is Salt Lake City. Because they acknowledge that Salt Lake City was there before they were. But at the same time, they observe everything that is in the normal franchise agreement. Franchise agreements are pretty uniform across the state. And so they still abide by all of that. And then pole attachment agreements, they have to enter into because that's a physical thing that they're trying to attach to. And part of the answer to your question is subsection 8. Subsection 2 is subservient to subsection 8. So even though they can lease, transfer, if it's an interest in putting their lines on the pole, we still have the right of final decision as to whether or not we want to allow them to do that. They need to come in and do
But
that.
I guess my concern would be though, they put their lines up and all of a sudden, and we know who we're dealing with, but then if they sell, lease or otherwise dispose, then we may be dealing with a company that we have no clue who they are.
So before they can do that, that would constitute an interest in the property, an interest in the lines, an interest in our poles. They would have to
Requires
come into us.
our permission then.
They need our permission. to do that.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it doesn't prohibit them from making that ask.
A good point. Yeah, they can sell to whoever they want to. That explains it.
But we don't necessarily have to prove it. So.
Yeah. Okay.
That would be the bottom line. So.
Yeah, so if it's there and they sell, it means that we're not just gonna kick them off because they're under new ownership. It kind of protects the assets are there, but it also means we don't have to allow them if there's not space. So for new, that's covered in this agreement too, that we still have full control over what goes on our poles.
Okay.
So,
Ty, will we have any trouble getting them to sign this?
no,
I mean, where they don't historically haven't signed one for anybody.
yeah, so we're a 152-year-old city.
Okay.
It's the franchise, they're not signing the pole attachments. They're forced to sign because they can't go onto our poles without the
Yeah.
pole attachment. It's a separate agreement.
I see.
I think that we're actually going to end up with a franchise agreement too. So it's just going through their process and knowing, who we're talking to. But basically, if they want to do business or exist in our easements and that sort of thing, that's kind of what came up here, right? We said, hey, we're building a new road. You gotta, we're gonna have to pay to put them where they belong in the new road. But that's typically how that works in a franchise agreement. But we just told them we're not gonna permit any new movement. So you can't do any new work in Morgan without a franchise agreement. And so that's kind of our leverage. It's like, keep what you have, but if you want to keep connecting people, we're going to need a franchise agreement so we know what those terms are. You can't just do whatever you want. So
When you're going down the road and you see a bird on the pole, you say, look at the cute bird on the telephone pole. Clark takes exception to that. It's not a telephone pole.
Trying to get that rephrased.
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, it includes, the franchise agreement will include our easements in the ground, in the street.
Mhm.
Anytime they have a new connection, they have to do a permit, right? So the franchise agreement's in their own interest to say, hey, this is what we agreed to.
Mhm.
And who takes care of what. If we say move a vault because you put it in the wrong place or conditions changed, we need to know what those terms are. So I think we're going to end up with a franchise agreement, or, you know, they're pretty much just done
Okay.
doing any new business. So
I see a $10 annual rental fee per pole. Is that a going rate? Is that a fair rate? Not enough, too much?
it's better than what it was.
There's-
When we did Utopia, we were about 5. I can't remember. We
Yeah.
looked around, asked the question. There's some as much as 15.
Okay.
For us, I think it's adequate. Also, because we have Utopia, it's going to limit the number of total people trying to attach to the pole. If we were trying to accommodate more people, we're going to need taller poles. It's going to put more weight on every pole.
Mm.
It would cause, you know, more issues. But
Mhm.
I think that this is
Give you numbers.
Clark, do
adequate.
they cause you trouble putting their stuff up? Does it get in your way? Is it burdensome?
They're a nuisance.
Yeah.
You know, you want to accommodate because it's for your customers, you know, it's for your citizens. You want them to have access to what they want to sign up for, you know,
Yeah.
and let them have a choice. They're a challenge to deal with.
Uh-huh.
Always have been. I mean, they've been attached. I had the guys go around, count the poles.
Uh-huh.
They're roughly attached to 150 poles. Been attached for years and have been not paying any, you know. So once we get the agreement going and the dialogue with them, it's helped us, like Ty's saying, it's helping us as we go forward with these other developments and things, because now we have a little more relationship and a little more leverage with them to accommodate what we're trying to do. You know, if it's a pole, like when we do a pole replacement, oftentimes we've asked them, we never really approached them and said, you know, you're taking up, you know, 2.5 feet of this pole. Would you like to take part? Instead, we use that pole attachment to kind of compensate for those added costs. So we want to make sure that they're paying their fair share, and also that they'll respond when we have issues, because a lot of times folks will call, you know, I got a hanging line, blah, 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 blah.
It's not
like,
yours.
you know, normally it's the lower hanging wires that are giving us trouble. And so they're getting better at responding, and, you know, then they have a little more accountability, because now we're asking them to do things and they're paying their share.
Mhm.
And it's a better working deal. So.
Okay.
The other thing on the backside, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but it's hard not being in person. But the other thing is when they're not paying, to get them off the pole. So when they abandon a line or they leave a line up indefinitely, not charging them gives them no incentive to
Mhm.
reduce that, right? So if they're paying every single line that's attached to every single pole and they abandon one, at least they're paying for that deadline to be on the
Yeah.
pole. And I think that's
Good
why
point.
we never get them off the pole when they abandon a line. It's just because it doesn't cost them anything. So
So Gary, wouldn't we have an obligation to provide space on a pole? I mean, there's got to be something out there that says we don't need 10 poles going down the parking strip.
Yeah, no, there's no, I mean, we could, if the poles were full, they'd have to figure out another way to do it. If our poles reach what we call capacity, then they'd have to figure out a way to underground it or a different way of doing it.
Okay.
Do we have to provide them with space to do that? Yes. You know, we'd have to, you can't lock them out, but you can dictate how they travel in your streets, whether
Okay.
they're on your poles or not. Yeah, this is entirely up to you as to whether or not you let CenturyLink on your poles, but according to what Clark's saying, they're already there and we should be collecting from them.
At least we can have some control.
Yeah, they've been.
Clark, how do you feel about the agreement? Is there anything that you'd like to see different?
No, just kind of like we'd indicated, I think it creates a dialogue with them. And like I say, it gets us introduced to who their engineers are, who their technicians are, so that when we do have trouble, because we're calling the same number that everyone else calls and getting passed around, and you never really know who to deal with. So I think once, you obligate them through these agreements, I mean, the last couple months, we've met folks that have come out of the woodwork that weren't even there until we asked them for this. And now we can go to those contacts and get responses because, like you say, I know of a line over on 700 East. I'd love to say, please get rid of yours and attach to ours. There's no reason to have their double line there. It actually causes us trouble when we're trying to get in and work on ours, and we would love to have them attached. There's room, there's a place for them, and at least when you're going through this, you have that chance to at least talk about that, where before you didn't even have a contact. So
This would force them to move that pole though, right?
Something that was necessary for the city. The only thing they excluded specifically is beautification.
Yeah, I noticed in here that it has to do some aesthetics and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, they've excluded that. I highlighted that just because I thought it was amusing that they would put that in there because there's a dozen other reasons why we may ask them to move it, this being one of them. As a practicality, we can't get to our poles. And so, I think it would be a legitimate request to ask them to move that, to place their utilities on our pole.
yeah, it would.
So you couldn't ask them to remove a pole or replace a pole or relocate a pole due to just something that's of aesthetic value.
Right. Well, according to this, you can. According to the agreement that the way it's drafted, you can.
Is this our agreement or is it one that they provide?
It's, they provided us with one and we came back and provided them with ours.
Yes.
And then they came back and provided us with ours adjusted. And we went back and said, we don't want these items. And so this is what's left of what it's the majority of it's our agreement, what we've used with Utopia and All West. Would you concur with that, Ty? But it's, pretty much. But theirs was, I can't remember how many pages it was the first time we got it. It was about 2 to 3 times.
Is that right? In
So-
volume, huh?
So are you comfortable with this agreement then, Gary?
Yes.
So,
I mean,
so can I ask a question that's highlighted here? Is in no event shall city settle or attempt to settle any such claims, damages, or penalties without the prior written consent of the company. So if we want to settle a claim or some damages that they've incurred, we can't do that without having written permission from them?
we can't obligate them to those damages. If we want to pay our own damages, we can go ahead and do that, but we can't settle a claim for them on behalf of both of us. So if both of us were sued because somebody hit a pole, we could settle our own claims, but we couldn't settle claims.
Their claim
for them.
That's what that means then.
Yeah.
Well, and so in practicality, we put claims on each other on a daily basis. I think the claims are if there's discrepancy or violation of the agreement. so the agreement's nice because we have something to talk about, right? Right now, we have nothing to go off of. So who's in the right, who's in the wrong, but it's saying that, you know, we're not gonna go forward without,
We won't settle it without we won't
Yeah.
settle it for both of us, the claims for both of us. without-
but it's not the daily claim. That's just standard practice. And we've done that with or without the agreement, if that makes sense, right?
We can solve
Like, hey,
our,
yeah, when you were working here, we hit your line, you know, we owe you, it's an insurance claim. You know, hey, your system caused us a bunch of work, so we'll, you know, or the work you did was bad, you didn't patch the road, we had to go back and patch the road, then we'll just put a claim on you. I don't think it's that. I think it's, you know, it's not daily occurrences, but I think it's more in terms of the pole attachment agreement, but I could be wrong.
the answer that you had earlier to the question of moving the pole, the one that we don't like, is in 14A. And the second part of that, it says, talks about no pole or structure shall be erected by the company without the prior approval of the city, but it says also, however, no location of any pole or wire holding structure of the company shall be a vested interest, and such poles or structures shall be relocated, removed, or modified by the company at its own expense whenever the city determines that public convenience would be enhanced thereby. So we would determine in this situation, you could determine that the public convenience would be enhanced thereby because it's interfering with our ability to.
Okay.
Yeah, or if we took a whole street and said, hey, we're taking all these poles and we're gonna remove poles and put all the lines in the ground, they have to follow the direction of the city.
That's all I had. Thank you.
So this could be, this would require a 90-day waiting period if you was going to terminate the contract. Is that correct? Are you ready, Mayor?
I'm ready.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve Resolution 22-24, a resolution adopting and approving a power pole line attachment agreement between Morgan City Corporation and Quest Corporation doing business as CenturyLink QC.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Now a motion and a second on item A, resolution 2224. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The opposed? Hey, Denise, it passes.
Steve, I forgot that Jeff was with us and would just maybe before moving on, ask Jeff, did you have any comments regarding the tax increase, the truth in taxation?
No, I was good with option 2.
Pardon?
It's good with option 2.
I says I was good with option 2.
Yeah, I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item B. City's commitment to complete the construction of the North Morgan Water Tank, resolution 2221. Aye. I'll have you take this one.
This is, okay, so this is a big deal. So I've been working on if you remember on the capital improvement list, and when we did priorities, when the ARPA funding first came out, I put in for grant money in order to upsize the North Morgan water tank. Right now it's a 100,000 gallon tank. We would upsize it to 1.5 million gallon tank. We were looking at maybe on our own property versus theirs, but because we've come to an agreement, we're working off the assumption that we would be able to rebuild it right where it sits on that property. Of course, we still need to buy the property and that sort of thing. The original estimate was 4 million. Matt just finished this week with a new assessment, so it's 6 million. And so we're it's a big decision point. And I've done homework. So here's the scenario. We're this week ready to apply. We have the application all put together to do a Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart grant. So that grant used to be capped at 2 million, and now they've bumped their threshold up to 5 million on a 50-50. So essentially we could do a $3 million grant. So it's a $6 million project. We could do a $3 million grant, and then we're just committing that we will come up with our 3 million. So the plan is to go to Division of Drinking Water and Division of Water Resources for additional state money that could serve as our match. So that's the question. I think we have a couple years. Once we get the grant, we have a 3 or 4 years. I mean, the money doesn't have to be spent right away, but it's just a matter of, do we apply for the grant, move forward, put the project together, but basically start with the BOR grant and then work on the other state grants as the match. I think even if it's loan, there's a lot of state money right now from the ARPA. I don't know that there's ever going to be this much money available again. Water's a big priority for the state. So we have pretty good odds of developing that water resource on almost 100% grant money, other than if we don't get the state, grant money, we'd have to bond or whatnot for the other 3 million. So this is the first step. Either we jump off and pursue it, or we say, yeah, we're not ready, and maybe reassess it next year. Really, the only risk is we're saying we're committed to our half, and if we don't get our half, or the it doesn't come through other matching sources, then potentially we just lose the grant. This is just to let them know that we're serious, and I can't remember the number of customers. I think a 1.5 million gallon tank would serve 5,000.
I can't remember how big our South Oregon water tank that we built 15
2
years
million.
ago. 2 million?
It's 2 million. It's 2 million. Yeah, it's a 2 million gallon tank. The Mahogany Ridge is 750. Robinson is 500,000, and this one's 100,000. So on our water system, our big capacity issue is really just tank. With the North Morgan Spring, it comes into 100,000 gallon tank, and we draw that down to 6 or 8 feet at the bottom, let it recharge overnight. But because it's so small, we just have to run pumps and wells to get it, recharged. And then once it's full, then we spill spring water. We don't capture it because all winter we don't have the capacity to be storing it. So it kind of leverages the seasonality, of our water system. So without even another water source, upsizing this tank would kind of secure our water future for a long time. So
Kind of like a reservoir in the wintertime.
that's what they call it. A tank is a reservoir.
So how binding is this resolution, Gary? I mean, I guess my question is if we pass it, is it binding if we can't come up with additional funding and can't do the project?
It's pretty binding. It's making a commitment. And to Ty's point, you know, I guess if we didn't come up with the funds, there's not a lot that they can do. But it is making us make a commitment today to fund the rest of the project beyond the grant, and indicating that we'll take all necessary steps to do it, including, if necessary, raising water rates to do that.
Do we have to have this resolution in place, Ty, in order to try and go after some additional grants?
Yeah, so that's a grant requirement, and it's also a good idea. So I've applied for grants that I haven't necessarily come and asked council about at the $70,000 range, but that's what it's saying is like, as a city, we're committed. This isn't just a rogue city manager or some, you know, mayor obligating the city. So, and I don't know, I'm always exploring options. I put the kind of the path forward out there, and I'm not even sure how I feel about recommending the need. I just know there's a lot of money. Money's as cheap as it's going to be for a long time. You know, for example, Hennifer just got a $2 million loan for 1% interest. So I just hate to look back in 10 years and say, now let's put a project together. It's only going to get, you know, more
Can I make it
difficult to do? Sure.
maybe on this? What made me feel a little bit comfortable after reading it, I'm going, wow, you know, the feds really require that you put the pedal to the metal and do it, you know, and move forward. But there would need to be something between this and a final agreement between the city and, because this is unilateral. This is the city just saying, we're going to do this, but it's not, there's no commitment on the other side, on the federal government's part, no signature, no. So it's not an agreement. This is a one side resolution that says, we're prepared to go forward. We're going to go forward. We're going to go ahead and fund it. But we still would need to enter to ultimately a final agreement with the federal government where they agree to provide us with the money and we agree to accept the money. So I guess in view of that, I felt pretty comfortable with making a firm commitment that we will make our, you know, do our best efforts to move forward. But as far as binding us, if they were to come back and against the federal government saying, we're going to sue you over this, you have to increase your tax rates or whatever else, they may be very disappointed that we didn't make it, but there's nothing in here that commits them on the other side, which you can't have one sided agreement.
Yeah, it's just a grant application and we don't even have the award. So like what Gary's saying is if we had an award document, that's when we would be saying,
that's when it gets serious. When you get awarded the grant and you have to sign the grant document, that's when I would be concerned about making sure you have a method to pay for it, because then you are going to commit to whatever commitments they would require you to make in order to pay for it. So
The grant, would you sign the grant document?
Could you back out then before even starting?
You could
say, government, here's your money back and we'll see you later.
They're not giving you anything on this yet, but when they do give you something.
But if you did sign,
then you'd have.
Then changed your mind, you just hand them the money back? Probably not.
Probably not.
Yeah.
At that point, given you.
We wouldn't We wouldn't accept it really, so we would go after the state grants concurrently and probably just do everything we can, but what we're saying though is we're in good faith effort. This is something that we want to do. It's not just a
So
I mean, we've done all the engineering on it. We've done the agreements to buy the, to buy the property. It's definitely a need. It's just a timing. At some point, we're gonna have to upgrade that tank. So that's kind of where we're at.
Ty, look, here's this, two questions. One, this doesn't have anything to do with the North Morgan Water Users Agreement.
Other than the placement of the property, if the project can still go forward, but if we don't own that property, we would be building this tank on our property, so it would just have additional costs.
Okay.
We based all the costs on putting it on that current property.
Yeah. So talk about this idea, this concept, and that is, I mean, number one, we all recognize that 1 million gallons is better than 100,000 for sure. But how much of that 1 million gallons is working for just the current city residents versus new development? In other words, if half of it goes to, and it makes our city, our current capacity, adequate, but yet it allows for the other 500,000 allow for now new development. Shouldn't development be paying for that?
And can I piggyback on that? My question was going to be, why 1.5 million? Is that a sweet spot for some reason? So, yeah.
Yeah, so
that big.
That basically guarantees the build out of the city, right? So without expanding our boundaries, doubling our population, kind of those things that were just assessed. So to Dave's point, our obligation doesn't mean it has to show up in rates. We're also getting ready for a rate study. So all of those capital improvement costs should be recouped in impact fees. So yes, it would be the development community or each new development paying for that portion. We just don't know what that is yet. So if we're on the hook for a bond payment for $3 million, we recapture that through impact fees. Not current rate, the current rate. So
yes, but if development stopped, all of a sudden, then we are on the hook for the full amount. The payment's got to be made. Can development pay for what is their portion retroactively?
Yeah, it's all before or after. So our current impact fees are based on what was projected as capital improvements, but right now we're negative on our impact fee balance because we did that water line replacement on 100 North. Those are catching back up, but every time you do a new study, it just sets that new impact fee and it leverages out over time, if that makes sense. So all of the upgrade portion would be impact fee eligible. But what I'm saying is we don't know if it's 3 million or if I get another grant, if it's, our costs are 300,000.
So how old is our water impact fee study now? I mean, are we close to doing another impact fee study?
Yep.
So if you had this resolution in place, that could be added to your impact fee study, correct?
Yep.
I mean, in that light, it would be a good thing.
Or could,
Yeah, this is the best way of using impact fees is to bond for it, because then you're not under the 6-year limitation. You just use whatever impact fees come in and you use it to pay off the bond, because it always provides for that additional capacity, which you're allowed to use impact fees for. To answer your question, David, no, you can't go back and to the developer and say, well, we didn't have as much development come in, so we really need to collect a few more dollars. That's called an increase in fees. just your user fees.
Mhm.
And so the banks will never accept impact fees as a guarantee for a bond. They just don't because they're too
It's uncertain
unpredictable.
what that's going to be.
Right.
Yeah.
So backing those impact fees would be the guarantee that the city would make that if the impact fees, well, it doesn't matter. They would guarantee the payment on the bonds
Mhm.
through your fees. And if those fees are your fees for everybody.
Yeah, you're.
And if your fees were
usage.
offset by the impact fees, that's great. And I anticipate they would, if you get growing that fast, then that's exactly what would happen. But ultimately, your backing on the bonds will be, correct me if I'm wrong, Ty, but it would be your fees or some type of tax,
Yeah, your regular water charges, your the
water fees.
yeah, the fee that you set for your water.
Anything else, get it?
No,
So Ty, do we have any
And it-
feel then for how much extra capacity that provides versus how much is needed for the moment? I mean, capacity for future development on that size of a unit?
Yeah, I think it brings our capacity up to 5,000 connections. Right now, we have about 1,600.
1,500?
5,000.
1,600.
Right, but what do we have now? How many now?
1,600.
1,500. Yeah, so that's a lot of growth, isn't it?
I was just barely at a municipality today and they had enough capacity that they could go to build out in their storage tanks. So that means that they could fill up their entire municipality and have room for.
Who's that?
It was in Taylor West Weber
Okay.
Water District. So they'd build out enough and they'd seen the future enough that they're there to where they could build out. So they don't have to worry about increasing any infrastructure as they have more development coming in, is the bottom line.
like I say, that's an ideal way. of
And-
building
Unless
this.
they annexed.
Well, yeah, and to Ty's point, I mean, I know that the federal government, they've got a lot of projects out there now with infrastructure. We're looking at a project down in, being part of it in, down by Page, Arizona, and they're putting in $60 million into utilities. And as I travel around, there's a lot of municipalities around here that's getting on this, because there is a lot of ARPA money out there for utilities, and it really is. There's a lot of municipalities that are taking advantage of this right now. To Ty's point, it really is. I can start naming off a list of them that I know of that are trying to get this ARPA money. And I'm with Ty. I think this is going to be a one-shot deal. I don't know that after a little bit, this money's going to dry up and go away. I mean, but it's also tough to sit here and think, what are we going to be on the line for another $3 million? Where is that going to come from? You're kind of hoping and wish here that this is all going to work out, right? I mean, that's kind of maybe some of my concern that I have sitting here going.
Especially if we're expecting developers to pay for part of that and then it doesn't happen, then it's. you and
or
I
does
are
it
Paying for it.
Does it slow down,
Right.
This is the thing that I say that's kind of sometimes hard about being on the city council is where's my crystal ball that I can see in the future, right? That's the hard part that we get to do is our positions is try to look into the future and say, is this going to be a good thing or not? And that's always the hard part that I've always told people about being a member on the city council is if you could help me see into the future, it sure would make my job a lot easier.
Because a lot of your decisions literally will come.
Yeah,
will come
yeah.
to pass about
And
20
here we
years
are
from
sitting
now.
with one here we are sitting with the one in front of us that, if we could see into the future, it sure would help. But
Well, look at all the prior councils that we blame for our headaches.
Sins, sins of the father.
yeah, sins of our fathers, right?
Yeah.
But it is. It's
Yeah, I just can't see a better scenario. And it's on our list, and I just feel like it's my job to do our infrastructure the best we can. So when development happens, we're ready. Not that we're in a hurry for it, but I also understand, it's.
So in the resolution, Ty, is there any, I mean, I don't see that the size of the project is mentioned. I mean, suppose we could get away with a tank half the size and it made sense. Is that still an option?
Well, the cost wouldn't come down significantly. this is just saying that the city council's in support. The application identifies all the specifics of dollar amounts and size, and
There's no dollar amount to it or anything, so.
no, it's a letter of support basically, but it's
I
formal.
guess,
This
yeah,
is a-
the question more is size of the tank. I mean, talk about a smaller tank. Is that not in the cards?
Yeah, but while you're doing it, the 1.5 is kind of the engineer's recommendation. It's at the exact same level as our 2 million gallon tank. I think it's also based on how much water the spring produces. So you can oversize it to where it doesn't make any sense because you're just running your pumps anyway to capture X amount of gallons. And so I think that where the 1.5 comes from, it maximizes that we capture 100% of our spring water without having to
Pump it.
Yeah, yep. And it gives it a chance to recover all on spring water, all on gravity.
That's,
So it's not oversized, but really, if you were saying, let's do 1 million instead of 1.5 million, I don't know that it saves.
Mhm.
I mean, it takes so much to put the project together. I think that's why we're looking at just a 1.5 and secure our water future. That's basically what it does. And then all of our variables just come into replacing bad and old pipes, not creating new capacity at that point.
So in 20 years, we wouldn't be looking, they wouldn't look down on us like we didn't do a good job.
I would,
Well,
You differ with that, or?
no, I'd say this.
put this in perspective. I remember when we built the 2 million gallon tank up by the South Morgan Cemetery. I remember bonding with, I think it was the USDA, I think is who we bonded that with originally. And if I recall, that 2 million gallon tank was a million something to build that tank. And I remember 20 years ago having a discussion whether or not, oh my gosh, do we want to spend $1.5 million to build a new water tank up up by the cemetery? Well, looking back, I'm sure glad we did. It was almost a necessity because we didn't have correct fire, you didn't have enough fire flow protection. So yeah, to Eric's point, you ask yourself, 6 million is a lot of money, but what's it going to look like in 20 years from now? And and that's the, I don't know. I don't have the crystal ball.
Well, and I am, I don't want to say fairly confident, like I don't want to get myself fired. But there's not very many opportunities to match grant money with grant money. Right. So this is a federal dollars. And typically when you go to the state, you're talking about other federal dollars. You can't match federal dollars with federal dollars. Right now, the ARPA money is considered state money. It's already been on the state's books. They're putting it into their Division of Water Resources and Division of Drinking Water. And that's the scenario. I can't think of any better option, any better scenario financially. I can't come up with any other scenario that this will ever look as good as it does right now. So even if it is a low interest loan, 1.5%, when we look back in 10 years, if we don't do it now and we look back and try and do the same project in 10 years, where you go, 1.5, you can't get 1.5% interest ever again, in my mind. And even if we borrow the 3 million, it's a huge win, I think, for the city. It's just, are we?
So thinking
ready to do
on
it?
just recently, a meeting that with the high school being a 3-story, we needed to be able to commit 1 million gallons for fire protection to that. Wasn't that one of the?
Yeah, at one point we had to do that.
That was one of the reasons we built a 2 million gallon tank.
Yeah, no.
as I sit here and think about this, I get to see a lot of municipalities and talk to them about their water systems. I've never met one yet that says, man, I wish we had a smaller water tank. That discussion's never happened.
The other nice thing on this project I should mention is it includes, there's a couple $100,000 in there that takes any water that spills from the tank, takes it down by our well and recharges the aquifer. So instead of putting it to ditch and having it go to the river, it has a little recharge component to it, with a little piping and so I think it's going to score high. I think we're going to get a lot of, state support with what I would be one of the only cities that said, yeah, we can double our population tomorrow and be okay water wise. I don't know anywhere else in the state that could.
Not that I want to double our population.
No, but
I think that, yeah, I mean, if
but
it's
also,
built out, that's what you're saying is come and build in Morgan.
Well, there's a lot of stuff.
there's other factors that limit that. What I'm saying is then you don't have to scramble we also can't stop growth for very long. It just means we're not operating in crisis mode.
We
don't have. So
if there been any, it's probably premature, but I'm wondering if we need to study a little bit more on the financial side. Are there any either staff or companies that do studies that would say if we commit to this, here's the potential liability, here's what potential increase in taxes could be? I mean, we've got a couple $1 million, it sounds like, on a bridge that we're going to have to do.
well, I think what we do is the grant deadline is this week. So we apply for the grant, and before the grant award, it's going to take them a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Before we even find out, and the federal timeframe is so slow, then we go to the Division of Drinking Water and Division of Water Resources, and they will evaluate our needs, right? And or I'll just say they'll look at our rates, they'll look at our impact fees, and they do an analysis that way too.
Sure. That would be good.
So we know what that bond payment's going to be. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But without, just that one process right there. And then if it looks ugly or risky, then we just say, we tried our best, but we just couldn't come up with the additional match money and apologize.
So let's suppose we're awarded the grant from the feds. Do we have to commit to that before we can go to the state to get their money, or can the state commit to it simultaneous, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that's what we do is on the state level is we work with them and say, hey, we're just trying to put this together as the match, get a placeholder, have the whole thing studied and evaluated, and then we don't commit to the state until we find out on the federal one. So it just takes some.
Is the potential there that the full amount could be paid for by grants?
That's what I would be applying for. Yep.
So here,
and then even a direct appropriation from the legislature is not out of question. If I go to the two agencies or the state agencies and apply and, they say, well, your MAGI is too high, or they give us both of those kickbacks, I think we have a pretty strong case to go, straight to the legislature and say, hey, it's only a couple $1 million, which, so we're still a couple zeros short of what they're used to dealing with, but you could secure a town's water future and capture spring water and recharge the aquifer. And
you'd say we have a good argument.
I do think so.
So I guess then what I'm hearing from the discussion, we pass a resolution tonight. There's still an off ramp that we can take before committing to payments and increased taxes and so forth. Is that
Yep.
fair?
Yep.
Okay.
I have a question, Ty or Gary. So typically when we do a project like this, an enterprise fund project, a lot of times you'll fund it with, the rates, a revenue bond or, based on the rate of the rates. We just talking tonight about a certified tax rate. So my question is, had we have, let's just say that you took a look at that third option, which would have generated another $400,000. Can that money be applied to something like that as well? So you have a few options to pay it off. One would be a revenue bond based on rates. Other would be the tax rate.
Yeah, you can always use general fund money to supplement your enterprise funds. It just doesn't work the other way around where you're, charging your ratepayers in order to provide parks and streets and that sort of thing. So basically what happens is anything extra that we generate in the general fund goes to the capital improvements, or you can transfer it, to buy property or that sort of thing. But yeah, there's some flexibility there to make sure we're covered.
Okay.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we pass resolution 22-21, a resolution authorizing the city's commitment to complete the construction of the North Morgan water tank.
Second.
Okay, we have 22-21 resolution. The city's commitment, authorizing the city's commitment to complete the construction of the North Morgan water tank. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It sounded unanimous. Okay.
We'll note that Eric made that motion.
Well, thanks for not making my job contingent on.
Hang around here. Do you want to?
That Ty?
See you,
See you,
Clark.
Clark.
Good night, Clark.
Okay, let's move to item C. Contract between the State of Utah Governor's Office of Economic Development and Office of Outdoor Recreation and the Morgan City for assistance in the construction of the Commercial Street Trail. Resolution 2223. We finally got something really exciting on here.
So as you know, we realigned Commercial Street and we left the sidewalk off of that project and we decided to do trail instead. The concept was that, I would apply for a grant and we actually got the grant sooner than later. So this is the grant award of 78,000. I can't remember it's in there somewhere. Anyway, $78,000 towards that trail. The other funding would come from park impact fees. The trail system's part of our park and it's new. It would be considered developing new trail. And then also around the river, the landscaping, the trail would also go down to a 10-foot wide shelf along the river so you could walk underneath the bridge. So we have some design concepts there, but our match and the rest of it is budgeted for in the tentative or the new proposed budget with park impact fees. So that's the idea.
I have got a question on this. So, when I first saw this, I thought, oh, great, where's the map? How far is this going? So, maybe that's a real simple question, but how we extended Mickelson Mile out and then kind of down underneath the bridge? Is that basically what we're doing, or how far are we extending this trail?
So the bridge is actually the extension that ties into, the Mickelson Mile will tie into the bridge. The bridge has a 10-foot sidewalk that brings it over the river.
Yes, I remember that part.
What this does is it takes the sidewalk from the end of Commercial Street
Okay.
and creates a trail that would come up, connect to the intersection of the bridge, and then continue on behind the bus garage all the way up to the edge of the city boundary, which is right there by the fairgrounds.
That park lot in between the fairgrounds and the bus garage, there's kind of that long
Yeah.
skinny, so
Yeah.
we'd go to that.
Yep.
Or
And
back.
yep, we'll go up to the fairgrounds. So basically the trail would just take you up to the parking lot, and then you could walk through the fairgrounds at that point.
And I've always said that as this concept of the bridge came up, I'm like, man, it sure would be nice if we could have overflow parking at the Rexplex during the fair. And when other events was happening at the Rexplex, we could have overflow parking at the fairgrounds. So that then we could kind of, and that wouldn't be a bad walk from there over to either or.
Weather related.
Exactly. Well.
So Ty, so at the end of Commercial Street, where the sidewalk ends at Commercial Street, then from there over to the intersection of the bridge and beyond would be a 6-foot paved asphalt trail, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, and there would be a section that would also go under the bridge.
Yeah, over to
Um,
the bus garage.
Yeah, so it takes the pedestrian traffic where you actually don't even need to cross the road. You can go under the bridge and then back up on the other side behind the bus garage, because the road right out in front of the bus garage is really narrow.
Mhm.
And not really adequate for sidewalk or trail there, and then it would connect up to the fairgrounds. The county is aware, so that they could take the trail from there and extend it out to their own facilities. But that would be a county project, whenever they're ready.
Over to the river.
Future soccer fields or whatever.
Yeah, because they own all the property from that point,
That would be pretty slick.
So it hasn't been designed yet, but that's kind of what this grant does, is it kind of ties that the pedestrian side of the bridge project together.
You could start on either end of Mickles Mile and make a loop.
Yep.
Commercial Street and back to your
Yep.
point, instead of having to backtrack back.
Yes.
Yeah, and this is on a 50-50 match. So
Cost share, yeah. So
Yep,
we
yeah,
have to
so
come up with 78 too.
Yep. Well, we'll come up with a little bit more than 78. It's at a minimum $140,000 project, but like I said, we'll be using park impact fees for the whatever else we want to do as far as,
Okay.
park space improvement, trailhead, or whatever we end up doing there. So landscaping, that sort of thing.
The other thing is from Commercial Street to behind the bus garage, it's along the river, so it's
Mhm.
a neat
Mhm.
walk.
Follows the river.
Yeah, and because it hasn't been designed, it's pretty narrow right there, so there is a chance that the trail would actually be kind of a boardwalk over
That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
kind of over the edge of the river, and then come back onto full ground. Depending on what happens with the trees that are there, if it makes sense to remove a tree or go around, I'm just saying it has some design work left to do. This is just accept the grant and we move forward on that
It
project.
falls to us to maintain then down the road.
Yep.
Just like we would a sidewalk. Steve, I'd move to approve Resolution 22-23, adopting and approving a contract between the state of Utah, Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity, Office of the Outdoor Recreation of Morgan City for assistance in the construction of the Commercial Street Trail.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the contract between the State of Utah Governor's Office of Economic Development and the Office of Outdoor Recreation in Morgan City for assistance in the construction of the Commercial Street Trail, Resolution 2213. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Denise, it passes. Okay, item D, a bid award to Robinson Waste for the solid waste collection and transfer station services with Morgan City, Resolution 2225.
Okay, so this one, the current contract ends at the end of June 30th. We just put out an RFP a month ago. 2 months ago, we got them all back in May, end of May. Robinson was the only company that submitted a proposal. We did make them go through that process. We talked to some other companies, and we talked about our needs. And for other companies to do the service, they needed a full year just to even hire the staff and put in an order for trucks. So it's kind of a complicated time to, so for some of the other companies to be competitive. Robinson's proposed basically the same thing that we have now. They had a couple different price options, and the county's adopting this at the same time. But pretty much each term is just provides for cost of living and then also fuel rates. And so we've been, as staff, we've been really happy with the service that we've received. They've been really good to work with. It's always nice to talk to the owner of a company anytime you have a question. So I'm happy to recommend that we extend the agreement for another 5 years with Robinson.
How much increase is there?
No increase. The increase is just tied to future cost of living and fuel. So basically our charge per can goes up by, whatever amount. There's a schedule that he has for, if the price of fuel is X, then this is what your price per can is, and it just goes up in.
Do we pass
small
that along?
increments.
Do we pass that along to the resident?
No, we just pay it until, right now our rate that we adopted covers that.
Okay.
We're a little bit ahead on that budget, and so it doesn't necessarily mean an increase to what we charge the customer, because our rate was adequate. And then we also did a really good job on bidding out for new cans. So all of those expenses in that category are what determine the rate that we charge the residents. And at least for the next year, I don't anticipate there being any addition, any rate change to the customer.
Could I just add something to that, Dave? I've seen that sanitation rate anywhere from $13 a month to where it is now at $19 a month. So when you say, is it passed on or passed through? I guess you could say technically it is if that enterprise fund starts to bleed money, which it has. But to Ty's point, currently the current rate seems to be covering the costs, right, Ty?
We're ahead of the curve a bit.
Yes, we are.
Gotcha.
So, but it's varied over the years. Just so you do that. And And Ty and I chatted about this. It's been my experience too with Robinson, the personal experiences. A lot of times I'll get, somebody will call me and say, I didn't get my garbage picked up yesterday for some reason or another. It just takes a phone call to Robinson's or to Steve Robinson himself, and the next day it's picked up. They've been a great company to work for, so pretty pleased with them. And we've had them for quite a while as our carrier, so.
Yeah,
But-
I'd agree with that.
But, and in light of that, Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve Resolution 2225, authorizing an agreement with Robinson Waste Services for the solid waste collection and transfer station services within Morgan City, authorizing further negotiations for the completion of the agreement.
I'll second it.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the Robinson Waste Services for the solid waste collection and transfer station services within Morgan City. Resolution 2225. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hey, Denise, that passes. Ty, I'm gonna turn some time over to you on,
Mr. Mayor,
Oh.
I'm gonna leave you if that's okay.
thank you.
Ty's agenda looks really exciting, but I thought I'll have to catch it on the internet.
All right.
So.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Did he bring us back a burger before you?
Do you have a snack?
Yeah, can he bring us back a burger before he leaves? Burger and fries.
Okay, Ty, on the city reports and business.
Did you do
Fraud
the fraud
risk
risk assessment?
assessment.
Oh, that's just the one here, isn't it?
That's on the
That page.
business. So Denise does this for us every year. She does a great job. It's I don't know, maybe our third year, I want to say, that the legislature put this out as a requirement. We scored a 345 out of 395 points. So we're in the low risk. The only better one you could be is very low. So as you look through that report, I feel really good about that. I think it's kind of hard to do with the amount of staff that an entity has. Just, some things, like one of them's having a formal committee. We do a really good job of our audits, I think, with our CPA, and we have a good audit every year. So the need for a committee, I think, is hard to justify as a small entity. Then other ones like the hotline, it's,
Yeah, we're probably not big enough for that.
yeah. So anyway, I feel really good about where we're at.
Yeah.
Um,
Number L, just on policies, seems like kind of a basic one. Cash receipting and deposits. We don't have a policy on taking in cash.
No, we have procedures, but the written policy, it's more of a, what do we call it? Operating procedure, not a,
Procedure.
yeah, not a
mean-
policy. And
Seems like it wouldn't be hard to turn that procedure into a policy. Get 5 more points.
yeah. Yeah, that's a good point.
Those are usually some of the first ones you get out of the way.
Yeah, just a little bit more formalized, right? But our operating procedures and then kind of our accounting software. Yeah, we could just document that a little bit, but
Yeah,
we're
just
very careful with that. So that's a,
write it all
that's a low-
down and we got 5 more points.
yeah, low hanging fruit. So.
No, that's a good report.
Mhm.
Thanks, Denise.
Yes.
That's an annual report, is that correct? Okay, and you turn that into the state? Yeah, got you.
Yeah, and we review it with the council, so so the council's
Yeah,
aware.
we've looked at it in the past.
Yep. So, anyway, project updates, the basement's coming along well. It's, mostly all sheet rocked. The
That was a
HVAC.
glue day today in here.
Oh, good. Glad I was in Nashville instead. I can't smell anything, so I don't know why, why I care where I'm at, but, poor Denise. The train depot project's going well. We've been having on-site meetings, and so that's been kind of fun. Just some, they've uncovered the wood floor, and they're just gonna be able to sand, and there's a couple of sections that need replaced, but the wood, because the bathrooms are getting remodeled, they're gonna be able to take the wood out of the bathrooms and put them, replace the wood that's damaged on the main floor. Then refinish them and stain them, so it'll have all original wood floors. So stuff like that's pretty cool to watch how it comes together. Most of the work right now is concrete on the ramp, and then that upper deck. They're going to do stamped herringbone concrete on the top level, so it'll have a real nice look where it used to be all pavers. It'll kind of look traditional. They're leaving the pipes on the inside with the old radiant heat system. So of course it's all disconnected and gonna get new HVAC, but leaving some of that in there will be kind of cool to look, have that original look. So it's come along. It's a interesting thing. They're trying to salvage the same doors. They have to widen the doors for ADA, but it's like a 20 to 30 week out process just to get one door. Not very many companies even do the restoration on a door. So we're looking through some of those options. The budget gets brought in and all the decisions are made based on staying within the parameters of that that original budget. I remember there was some concern about doing a design build, but that's actually working out really well because the contractor gets to go back and forth with the architect, and instead of just having it all designed as a pie in the sky, the contractor has a real good input on, well, it's going to cost X amount of dollars. Are you sure that's the best route to go? And then sometimes it's contentious even, between architect and contractor, but it's been good to go through that project, and it's still on budget. It's just all decision points. The commercial street realignment's all but done. I think it's a good time to get a longboard and go try out that new road. They're just reseeding all the vegetation on the sides of it now, just to hold the
project.
Any surprises there, Ty?
Well, between water leaks are expected at this point.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that that's a surprise.
Count on it, huh? Yeah.
Just pleasant. I'm just pleasantly surprised that it went so quick and so smooth.
Yeah, I'll say
That they left the
Got
other
after
road
it.
open the whole time. Yep. Yeah, they're doing the
Yeah, I
seeding.
remember being a little bit concerned about the bid amount, and I'm glad to hear it all came in.
Yeah, we still have utility work to do on our own, putting the power lines and getting not Comcast, but CenturyLink, and some trenching on the side, but it won't interfere with the new road. So that's almost done. The sewer project's coming along, all the pipes in the ground. Just right now pouring the pad for the pumps and trying to schedule that with Parks and so that they can come out and get it all connected up. So it's just more of a timing issue. The sidewalk projects, the sumps are mostly done, and then they've just been framing for the sidewalk, and it's just everybody's on hold for when you get mud, for the concrete, because it's all on rations. I guess you just get told, hey, today's your day. So, they're just kind of framing as much as they can. They're ahead of whatever the availability of concretes. So that's kind of a bummer, but I think as much work as that can be done is being done. So hopefully that all comes together. Just a reminder of the holiday, that we follow the state holiday. So our office will be closed on the 20th. I think that's a Monday. Just a couple of upcoming events is the car show on the 18th, and then the 4th of July celebration. We're still providing the kids games for the 4th, and then there's a little schedule attached, but those plans are coming along well. The chamber's fully engaged and meeting every week until the 4th of July to make that come together, and it's pretty impressive that how much they get done, because they just barely did that golf tournament at the beginning of June. So all their focus was on the golf tournament, and then switched right to the 4th of July, and just a lot of effort to pull that together. So
I'd like to
this year
I'd like to send some feelers out for the talent show. Anybody that, Eric?
I won't even be in town.
But spread the word if you know anybody that might be interested. They're still a little bit shy right there.
Yeah. The entertainment's been a question. We'll try and get that figured out. For the parade, the city does as you know, we do a float or a entry every year. This year, we're going to highlight the Parks Department. So we'll probably have the side-by-side Kubotas and maybe just one pickup. So the mayor and council, you're always welcome to, if you have any interest, let me know. So that's always fun to throw out candy and be a proud representative of one of our city departments. We just pick a department every year to highlight. This year, one of the things we're gonna throw out is inflatable beach balls with our logo on it. So trying to do something less annoying than whistles. That's what we did last year.
Inflatable, what?
We got some parent feedback that
Balls.
That'd be
yeah.
good.
So then just an update on our general plan. The contractors completed their portion. They've fulfilled their obligation. I did an agreement with them to keep them on for 3 more meetings. It's not their job to make sure the plan gets adopted. They just need to propose the final product, and they've done that. Then our planner, Jake, and he's gonna take the planning commission through a couple of meetings of their own to kind of take all of our internal comments, consolidate them, make sense of them, and then we'll give the feedback to the contractor just in consolidated notes. Right now, it's kind of all over the place. There's a lot of different thoughts. There's a lot of different concerns. And so we're just going to take a couple of months internally, get our comments back to the contractor, let them make the final adjustments based on the planning commission's input and planning staff. And then they'll have a public meeting, a final public meeting, a final planning meeting, and then a final council meeting. So we'll do that in a couple of months, but that'll be kind of an additional cost, but I think we're close. So it's good. It's been healthy discussion. Appreciate the support. I remember when I first proposed getting a grant to do the general plan, it was kind of a hard thing to do, but very valuable, and it only starts the next steps, right? This is just general plan use, but it'll help us update our land use, our zones for one thing, and then our ordinances after that, so that we basically know what we want moving forward. Best use of land in different areas of the city. So that's where we're at on that project. Just wanted to let you know that the contract's been fulfilled.
Let's talk just a little bit. The Planning Commission does their work. They come up with their conclusions, but we talk about the council ultimately approving it. I guess the potential's there that maybe the council looks at it differently than the Planning Commission. Do we wait until it comes to the council before providing any say or input? Is that the proper way to do it?
No, the council, we've had some joint meetings. The council's definitely welcome to participate on the comments back. And then,
Yeah, but that was very difficult because of the number of people in the room, and
Right.
I mean, 2 hours went by in 10 minutes because like you say, everybody had a different thought on it. And I think there were thoughts there that weren't expressed just because of
sure.
time and number of people.
Yeah, so the contractor will bring it through that process, but when it comes to the city council, you don't have to adopt it. We're just paying them to introduce it. And ultimately the city council takes the recommendation from the planning commission, and you're welcome to make any final changes or not adopt it at all. It's not a, hey, you have to adopt this because we just spent a year doing it. And then the council can, take it from wherever you want. It just won't be with that contractor anymore.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, we could use the service of our planner.
I just wanted them to take it through the entire process, but I don't want to right now be spending their time with all of our comments. I want us to consolidate all of our comments.
I think that's good. Yeah, let them work it the way they best see fit, just like we do everything else. And like you say, there's also time for the public to comment.
And so now is our chance to make it our own. Is basically,
Yeah, that's probably well to let it run its course.
So, then another update is I did go to the county meeting and propose that new rate. I mean, it's for the RDA. It's not, this isn't an RDA meeting. It's just the council, but just an update that the school district and the county are in favor of that new rate proposal, or that cost share proposal to go to 75-25 instead of 60-40. And so I'll draft a new interlocal agreement and bring that to the RDA and the other. I'll take it back through the process with the other two entities, and we'll get that adopted. So we will have funding next year for one additional RDA project, one per year starting.
Do you do the same with the school?
Yep. The school had they were in favor as well.
Yeah, good work.
So
Ty, did the county the county approve of the Robinson Waste contract?
It's on their agenda for next Tuesday.
Okay.
So we're both doing it concurrently so that we have it in place by the end of June.
Okay.
We don't anticipate any issues, any problems with it, because we've been kind of doing it concurrently. The city took the lead on the proposal, and and that, but we've been having joint meetings with them. So. I think theirs will be next week on their agenda.
Comments, discussions on anything?
I don't have any.
I won't be to the planning commission. Tony, could you take a few good notes?
I think you covered me last time, so yes,
Okay.
we'll be happy to.
Thank you.
And then just kind of a little strong fun rumor is can't remember their official name where Buzzy's used to be.
The smoking box car?
Smoking boxcar,
Smoking box car, is that what it is?
that's what was on the window.
Okay, they only had a couple teeny little items to get finished up for a soft opening on Saturday,
This Saturday?
this Saturday. Is
Oh,
their
nice.
hope, but they were real little items, so I think.
It's your dinner.
I know.
Go get some barbecue, go get some
And
brisket.
I went there today and that place, he's done an amazing job. That's pretty first class. So I'm excited for him.
Yeah, good for them.
Somebody chopped the weeds in front of the hotel. That looked a lot better
They
too.
did, didn't it? I
Yeah.
noticed that.
Yeah, that looks kind of ratty when they let those weeds all grow up in front of, got that brand new hotel. And
Yeah, surprised they let them go. Huh?
yeah.
So you got anything for us, Denise? Adjourn.
Denise,
Thanks so
What are you
much.
doing back east, Ty?
sorry, what time is it back there?
It's 10:17. So I'm in Nashville at the APPA conference, the American Public Power
American what?
Association, Public Power Association
Oh, okay.
conference. And so it was a good thing that Clark